Hello everyone, and welcome back to Spook Speaks. I know many of you tune in to these videos to help you to sleep, so I thought it would be a fun idea for everyone to share where you're listening from in the world. Feel free to drop a comment below, and if you enjoy the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now get cozy and relaxed. Let's begin. Story 1. I stood behind the counter, watching the clock slowly tick past 11:30 p.m. It was that time of night again, the time when the world outside Walmart seemed to slow down. The parking lot almost completely empty, save for the occasional car passing by. My shift had just begun. Working the night shift had its perks. It was quiet, for one thing, and you didn't have to deal with the endless stream of customers asking you where the bathroom was or why the cereal wasn't on sale. But lately, something felt off about the store. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. There was this heaviness in the air, like the building itself was holding its breath. I glanced down aisle 5, where the flickering fluorescent lights buzzed quietly above the rows of cleaning supplies. That section had been giving me the creeps lately, mostly because it was always empty. Except, it wasn't always empty. I'd seen shoppers down there, just out of the corner of my eye, but whenever I looked up, they were gone. No footsteps, no noise, just gone. It wasn't until last Tuesday night that I really noticed something strange. I had been stacking some boxes when I saw him. A man, middle-aged maybe, wearing a plaid shirt that looked like it had come straight out of the 1980s, standing at the end of the aisle. He was staring at a shelf full of canned goods, not moving, not blinking. I figured he was one of those night owls who wandered in half asleep and lost track of time. "Need help finding something?" I called out, but the man didn't respond. He just stood there, still as a statue. I felt a cold chill creep up my spine. Something about him was off. His clothes, maybe, or the way he stood so perfectly still. I took a step toward him, and just like that, he vanished. 1 second he was there, and the next, the aisle was empty. I stood there for a moment, blinking. There was no way he could have left that fast. I would have heard him walking. I hurried down the aisle, checking around the corner, but the store was dead silent. The air felt colder too, like someone had left the door to the frozen food section wide open. "Must be tired," I muttered to myself, brushing it off. But the man wasn't the only one. Over the next few nights, I started seeing more of them, people who didn't seem to belong. A woman in a floral dress that looked like it came from a thrift store. A kid pushing a cart filled with toys that hadn't been sold in years. They always appeared at the edge of my vision, lingering in the farthest corners of the store. And then they would vanish before I could even speak to them. I wasn't the only one noticing strange things either. My coworker, Amanda, had mentioned something weird just the other night. "Have you ever seen someone in here after closing, but when you go look, they just aren't there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper as we huddled near the employee break room. Her face was pale, eyes darting toward the security monitors. "Yeah, I think I have. Maybe it's the lights playing tricks on us," I said, though I didn't believe it. Not anymore. I couldn't shake the image of that man from my mind, the one who disappeared so quickly, like a puff of smoke. I tried to reason with myself that it was just my mind playing tricks, maybe a lack of sleep, but that didn't explain the other strange things happening around here. I wasn't alone in this. Amanda had seen them too. The night after our conversation, I arrived at work with a sense of unease. The fluorescent lights in the parking lot flickered as I walked through the automatic doors. A cold gust of air blew past me, carrying the faint smell of something rotten, like old meat left too long in the back of the fridge. It dissipated just as quickly, but the unease lingered. I went straight to the back room where Amanda was checking inventory. She looked up as I entered, her usual light-hearted demeanor dampened. "Hey, you notice anything weird last night?" she asked without even saying hello. I could tell from her expression that she wasn't joking. "Yeah," I said, pulling a hand through my hair. "Actually, I've been seeing stuff for a while now. People, customers who shouldn't be here, and then they just vanish." Her eyes widened. "Same here. Last night, after we talked, I saw this woman in the electronics section. She was just standing there, staring at the TV wall. I went over to ask if she needed help, and I swear to God, she was gone before I even reached her." I felt a chill, knowing she had experienced the same thing. "We have to check the cameras." It sounded paranoid, but I had to know. I needed to see if we were losing it, or if something more was happening. We went to the back office where the security feeds were monitored. Kevin, the overnight security guy, was slumped back in his chair, half asleep as usual. His job was mostly boredom, making sure no one tried to shoplift in the dead of night. "Hey, Kev," Amanda nudged him awake. "Mind if we take a look at something?" He groaned, stretching and yawning. "Sure, what's up?" "We've been seeing some weird stuff on the floor. Like people. Customers who vanish," I said, and immediately felt ridiculous for saying it out loud. Kevin gave us a skeptical look, but shrugged, clearly not too bothered. "Sure, whatever. Let's pull it up." He rewound the footage to the time I'd seen the man in the plaid shirt. I stood behind Kevin, watching intently as the video showed me stacking boxes, just as I remembered. Then, right on cue, there he was. The man. He was standing at the end of the aisle, just as I'd seen. My breath caught in my throat as I watched the footage, but then something else happened. As I stepped toward him, the screen flickered for a brief second, just enough to make me blink, and when it came back on, the man was gone. Completely. No movement, no walking away, just gone. "What the hell?" Amanda muttered under her breath. "Glitch, maybe," Kevin said, though his tone suggested he wasn't so sure. He clicked through more footage, rewinding, fast-forwarding, checking the other cameras. Nothing else showed up, and the more we dug, the more frustrated we became. "This isn't right," I said. "People don't just disappear like that." Kevin leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "Look, it's an old system. Stuff glitches all the time. But if it makes you feel better, I'll keep an eye out." It didn't make me feel better. Not at all. I tried to go back to my usual routine, stacking shelves and zoning out to the distant hum of the store. The hours dragged on, but the eerie feeling never left. Every so often I would catch movement out of the corner of my eye, only to look and find nothing. It was around 2 a.m. when it happened again. This time, I was restocking the frozen foods, carefully placing cartons of ice cream into the freezers. I could hear the distant buzz of the intercom system clicking on, followed by a faint crackle. "Attention Walmart shoppers," the disembodied voice of the automated system chimed in. "The store will be closing soon." But that was impossible. We were open 24 hours. I glanced around, expecting to see Amanda or one of the other night shift workers reacting, but no one seemed to be nearby. I shook it off, trying to focus on my work, but then I saw it again, a figure standing at the far end of the freezer aisle. It was the same man in the plaid shirt. My heart began to race. I was sure now that something was wrong. He wasn't just some customer. He was something else, something I couldn't explain. "Hey!" I called out, my voice echoing through the empty store. This time, I didn't hesitate. I ran toward him, my footsteps echoing in the quiet aisles. But as I approached, he started to move, slowly at first, then faster. I sprinted after him, my breath coming in quick gasps. He turned a corner near the dairy section, and when I rounded it, he was gone. Completely gone. Panting, I looked around, feeling the cold sweat dripping down my back. This wasn't normal. I needed answers. The next day, I did something I hadn't done before. I started digging into the history of the store. Walmart might seem like the most mundane place in the world, but the land it was built on hadn't always been a shopping center. I figured maybe there was something in the town archives that could explain the strange occurrences. I found old newspaper clippings from decades ago. This area used to be a small industrial park, surrounded by a few housing developments. There had been an accident, a fire in one of the nearby buildings. Several people had died, including workers and shoppers. The articles were vague about the details, but it gave me an uneasy feeling. Had Walmart been built over something tragic? Were the spirits of those lost in the fire somehow tied to the store? It wasn't long before I started piecing things together. Some of the people I had seen, the man in the plaid shirt, the woman in the floral dress, matched descriptions of people who had died in that fire. I felt a cold realization wash over me. The after-hours shoppers weren't just ghosts. They were the souls of the dead, trapped here, returning night after night. I spent the rest of my shift in a daze, running through everything I'd found in my head. Could it really be? Were the people I was seeing tied to the fire from decades ago? It sounded insane, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. I couldn't deny what I had seen with my own eyes. Those shoppers weren't alive, at least not in the way I was. The next night, I showed up early. I wanted to check out the store's older sections, the parts that hadn't been renovated in years. There were rumors about the basement too, but I wasn't sure if employees were even allowed down there. As I wandered through the stockroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The air seemed colder than usual, and every little sound echoed unnervingly. I knew something was out of place, even before I stumbled across it. Near the back of the stockroom, hidden behind dusty boxes of outdated products, was a door I had never noticed before. It wasn't marked, and it looked ancient, like it hadn't been used in years. The handle was rusted, and a layer of grime clung to the edges. A wave of dread washed over me. Something told me that whatever was behind that door held the answers I was looking for, but it also felt like I was stepping into something I wouldn't be able to walk away from. My hands trembled as I reached for the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a staircase that descended into darkness. The faint smell of mildew and decay wafted up, making me gag. I pulled out my phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the steps as I carefully made my way down. The basement was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes your skin crawl. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, the light from my phone flickered, casting long shadows on the cracked concrete walls. The room itself was larger than I expected, filled with old equipment and broken shelves. There were remnants of something else down here, things that didn't belong in a Walmart. Old tools, rusted and decayed, were scattered on the floor. There were even a few charred wooden beams stacked in the corner, remnants of something much older. But what really caught my attention was the wall at the far end of the room. Scrawled across it, in faded red paint, were words that sent a chill through my entire body. They never left. My breath caught in my throat. The air felt heavier down here, oppressive, like the weight of 1,000 eyes was pressing down on me. I turned, hoping to find something else, anything that would explain what was happening, but all I found was more debris. Old boxes, broken glass, and a few scattered papers. One of the papers was half buried under a pile of rubble. It looked like some kind of work order, dated from the 1980s, long before the Walmart was built. I brushed off the dust, revealing faded text. It mentioned renovations, but something in the notes caught my eye. Clear site for construction, remove all debris, and the rest was too smudged to read. But underneath that, someone had written in jagged letters, "Do not disturb the graves." My heart was pounding. I stuffed the paper into my pocket and backed away from the wall. I didn't want to be down here any longer. Whatever had been buried beneath this place, it hadn't been left in peace. And now those spirits were roaming the aisles, trapped in some twisted loop of time. The next few nights were worse than ever. More and more of them appeared. The after-hours shoppers grew bolder, lingering in the aisles longer, getting closer to me before vanishing. They weren't just fading away anymore. They were watching. Their eyes followed me as I worked, empty and lifeless. I could feel their presence all around me, a suffocating weight that made it hard to breathe. One night, while I was alone in the electronics section, I saw her, the woman in the floral dress. She was standing in front of the display TVs, her reflection staring back at her from the screens. Only, there was something wrong with her reflection. It was smiling, but she wasn't. My blood turned to ice. I backed away, heart racing, but as I turned I heard a voice, a low, guttural whisper that seemed to come from the very walls around me. "They're waiting for you." I ran. I didn't care about anything else at that point. I bolted through the store, the shelves a blur as I sprinted past them. I could feel something behind me, the air growing colder with every step. When I reached the front of the store, I slammed into the doors, but they wouldn't open. Panic surged through me as I slammed my fists against the glass. Open, open, damn it. Behind me, the lights began to flicker. Shadows stretched out across the floor, creeping toward me, slow and deliberate. I could feel them closing in. Just as I was about to lose hope, the doors slid open with a hiss, and I stumbled outside into the cold night air, gasping for breath. I couldn't go back to work after that, at least not without answers. The following day, I took the crumpled work order I'd found and drove to the town's records office. I spent hours digging through old files and maps, trying to piece together the history of the land Walmart now sat on. What I found confirmed my worst suspicions. Long before the store was built, the land had been used as a burial ground. Not an official cemetery, but a place where workers from the nearby factories had been laid to rest after accidents, fires, and even crimes that had been covered up over the years. When Walmart bought the land, they had ignored the warnings to leave it undisturbed. They had built over the graves, and now the dead were trapped beneath it. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread building inside me. What had we done? What had I been a part of, working in that place? When I returned to the store that night, something was different. The air was thick with tension, as if the very building was alive, pulsing with malevolent energy. I wasn't sure if I was more afraid of the shoppers or the truth I had uncovered. Either way, I knew I couldn't keep running. I had to confront them. I grabbed a flashlight and a set of keys to the basement. I wasn't going to run anymore. If the spirits were trapped, I was going to find a way to set them free, or at least find out what they wanted. As I descended into the basement again, I felt the weight of their presence growing stronger. The walls seemed to hum with energy, and I could hear faint whispers echoing through the darkness. I followed the sound to the back of the room, where the message on the wall still loomed over me. They never left. I set the flashlight down and began digging through the rubble near the old wooden beams. My hands shook as I uncovered something I hadn't seen before, a small, rusted box buried deep beneath the debris. Inside was a weathered notebook, its pages brittle and yellowed with age. I opened it, revealing page after page of frantic handwriting. It was written by someone who had worked on the site during the construction of the store. They described strange occurrences, tools disappearing, voices in the night, and shadows that moved on their own. But the last entry was the most chilling. We shouldn't have disturbed them. We should have listened. They want us to pay. I sat in the basement, the old notebook trembling in my hands. The writer's last entry echoed in my mind. They want us to pay. I could feel the weight of the words settling into my bones. These spirits, these after-hours shoppers, they weren't just restless. They wanted revenge. I had spent the last few nights running, but there was no escaping this anymore. I was in too deep. The only way out was through. I needed to confront the source of their anger and find a way to set them free. The notebook mentioned a burial ground beneath the store, but it was vague on details. I knew Walmart had been built on the land of old factories and unofficial graves. But how many bodies were down here? And how long had they been waiting for someone to acknowledge them? I flipped through the pages, looking for any clues that might point me in the right direction. The construction workers had clearly known something was wrong. They'd written about hearing voices, seeing shadows, and feeling watched. But the developers had ignored them, pushing forward with the project as if nothing was wrong. One entry caught my eye. We sealed the last room today. Covered it up like it never existed. No one will ever find it. The last room? Sealed? My heart pounded. If there was a room hidden beneath the store, one the spirits were tied to, I had to find it. It could be the key to ending all of this. I hurried back upstairs, heart racing, as I grabbed a crowbar from the storage area. My mind was already buzzing with possibilities. If I could find that sealed room, maybe I could uncover what had been hidden for so long. Maybe there was something down there, an object, a relic, something that was keeping the spirits trapped in this endless loop. Amanda wasn't on shift that night, but I wasn't about to wait for her to show up. I couldn't drag her into this. Not yet. This was something I had to do on my own. The basement was quiet when I returned, the air thick with an oppressive stillness. I retraced my steps, scanning the walls and floors for any sign of a hidden room. The notebook had mentioned a room that was sealed during construction, probably bricked over, forgotten. I tapped on the walls, listening for hollow spaces. After what felt like hours, I finally found it. At the far end of the basement, behind a stack of old pallets and broken shelving, was a section of wall that didn't match the rest. The bricks here were newer, cleaner, almost as if they'd been added long after the rest of the basement had been constructed. I set the flashlight down, gripping the crowbar tightly in my hands. My heart pounded as I wedged the metal into the cracks between the bricks, prying them loose one by one. The sound of the crumbling mortar echoed through the basement, a harsh, grating noise that made me wince. I worked as quickly as I could, my hands trembling with every movement. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I had cleared enough of the wall to reveal a small opening. It was barely wide enough to squeeze through, but I didn't care. I pushed the last of the debris aside and crawled through the hole, my flashlight flickering as I entered the sealed room. The room was small, barely more than a closet, but it was filled with an overwhelming sense of dread. The air was thick with dust and the smell of decay, as if something had been left to rot here for years. In the center of the room, there was a single object, a large wooden crate, its surface covered in dirt and grime. It looked old, very old. The wood was cracked and splintered, and the edges were bound with rusted metal. I approached it cautiously, my hands trembling as I wiped away the dirt covering the lid. There were markings on the crate, symbols I didn't recognize, but they looked ancient, almost ritualistic. Whatever was inside this crate had been sealed away for a reason. I hesitated for a moment, my instincts screaming at me to leave it alone. But I couldn't. Not now, not after everything I had seen. I had to know what was inside. With a deep breath, I pried the lid open. Inside, wrapped in layers of decayed cloth, was an old rusted bell. It was small, about the size of my hand, but its surface was etched with strange symbols, similar to the ones on the crate. It looked ancient, and yet I could feel something pulsing from it. Energy. Dark, malevolent energy. I didn't understand it, but I knew this bell was the key to everything. The spirits weren't just trapped here. They were bound to this bell. It was like a prison, holding them in place, forcing them to relive their deaths night after night. As soon as I touched the bell, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. My breath came out in visible puffs, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. The whispers started almost immediately. Low, guttural voices that seemed to come from all directions at once. They weren't just in my head anymore, they were real. "Release us!" The voices hissed, overlapping in a cacophony of desperate, angry pleas. "Release us!" I stumbled backward, the bell still clutched in my hand. The shadows in the room seemed to grow darker, thicker, as if they were closing in around me. I could feel their presence now, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, all watching me, waiting for me to act. I had a choice. I could destroy the bell, break whatever was binding them to this place, and set them free. But what would that mean for me? Would they take their vengeance out on the living? Or would they finally find peace? The whispers grew louder, more frantic. I could feel the spirits pressing in on me, their cold breath brushing against my skin. My hand tightened around the bell. "Set us free," they begged. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. This was it. The moment of truth. I could either break the bell and risk whatever consequences came with it, or I could leave it alone and continue living in fear, knowing that the spirits would never stop haunting the store. With trembling hands, I raised the bell high above my head. Time seemed to slow as I stared at the bell in my hands, my heart pounding in my chest. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. I could feel the spirits closing in, their cold, lifeless eyes watching my every move. And then, without another thought, I brought the bell crashing down against the concrete floor. The sound was deafening. A sharp, metallic ring echoed through the basement, followed by an explosion of energy that sent me stumbling backward. The bell shattered into 1,000 pieces, the ancient metal crumbling to dust. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. And then, the whispers stopped. The air grew still. The cold, oppressive weight that had hung over the store for so long lifted, replaced by an overwhelming sense of calm. I could feel it in my bones. The spirits were gone. The after-hours shoppers had finally been set free. I left the basement in a daze, my mind still reeling from what had just happened. The store was quiet as I stepped back onto the main floor, the fluorescent lights flickering softly overhead. There were no more shadows lurking in the aisles, no more whispers echoing through the walls. It was over. Amanda arrived for her shift a few hours later. I didn't tell her everything, just enough to explain that the strange occurrences had stopped. She seemed relieved, though I could tell she still had questions. As for me, I wasn't sure how to feel. I had set the spirits free, but at what cost? The bell was destroyed, but the memory of what I had seen, what I had done, would haunt me for the rest of my life. Walmart would go back to normal, the employees and customers none the wiser to the horrors that had unfolded beneath their feet. But I knew the truth. I had seen the dead, and I had freed them. And sometimes, late at night, when the store is empty and the world is quiet, I swear I can still hear the faintest whisper of their voices, carried on the wind like a distant memory. Thank you. Story 2. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I stepped through the automatic doors of Walmart, my heart racing with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was my first day on the job, and I felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. I was fresh out of college, struggling to find my footing in a world that seemed to demand experience I didn't have. I met with Mark, a veteran employee who had been working there for over a decade. He was in his 30s, with a scruffy beard and a warm smile that put me at ease. As he showed me around, he shared stories about the store, from the best snacks in the break room to the oddball customers who frequented the late-night shifts. "Just wait until you experience a night shift," he said with a grin. "You won't believe the things you'll see." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. But as my shift began, I quickly learned that the store took on a different life after dark. The aisles, once bustling with shoppers, were eerily silent, and the shadows seemed to stretch further than they should. During my first shift, I found myself restocking shelves in the snack aisle. As I arranged the chips and cookies, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I glanced around, but the store was empty, just me and the flickering lights. A few hours in, I heard the sound of something falling in the next aisle. I jumped, heart pounding. Just the store settling, I told myself, but when I went to check, I found a single box of cereal lying on the floor. I picked it up and put it back on the shelf, dismissing the oddity as my imagination. Mark stopped by, noticing my unease. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just getting used to the quiet, I guess," I replied, forcing a smile. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "You know about the restocking phantom, right?" I shook my head, curiosity piqued. "They say she haunts these aisles at night, restocking shelves long after everyone has gone. Some think she's trying to finish her last shift." As the weeks passed, I became more comfortable with my shifts, but the stories about the phantom lingered in my mind. Late at night, while I stocked shelves, I often heard whispers echoing through the aisles. I'd spin around, expecting to find a fellow employee, but each time I was met with nothing but the stillness of the store. One night, while organizing the frozen foods, I heard a voice call my name, soft and distant. I froze, glancing around. "Hello?" I called, but there was only silence in return. It became a routine for me, the whispers and shadows. The more I worked, the more I felt the presence of something, or someone, watching me. It was unsettling, but there was a strange comfort in knowing I wasn't alone. One evening, the whispers were particularly loud. I could make out phrases, though the words were jumbled and indistinct. As I stocked the cereal aisle, I caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of my eye, a figure darting past. My heart raced. I turned, half expecting to see another employee, but there was no one there. "Sarah, you okay?" Mark called from the end of the aisle, noticing my sudden stillness. I nodded, though my stomach churned. "Did you see that?" "See what?" He looked puzzled. "Never mind," I replied, shaking off the fear. But deep down, I felt a sense of urgency. The phantom was real, and it wanted me to understand something. It was during a particularly quiet shift that I finally witnessed the phantom. I had just finished restocking the paper goods aisle when I spotted the figure at the far end, pushing a cart filled with products. She moved gracefully, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders. I stepped closer, curiosity overtaking my fear. "Excuse me," I called out, but she didn't respond. The figure continued to restock, seemingly oblivious to my presence. As I drew nearer, she turned to face me. Her eyes were hollow, but there was a sense of familiarity that made my heart ache. And then she vanished. I stumbled back, disbelief flooding my senses. The phantom was not just a rumor, she was real, and she had just acknowledged me. Determined to uncover the truth, I spent my next few days off researching the store's history. I discovered articles detailing accidents and injuries, including one that struck a chord. A tragic incident involving a young employee named Jessica, who died while working the night shift years ago. Mark confirmed the story when I confronted him. "She was one of the best," he said, his expression somber. "Dedicated to her job, always going above and beyond. But one night, there was an accident. No one really knows how it happened." I felt a chill run down my spine as I pieced together the fragments of her story. Jessica was trapped in this store, forever restocking shelves in a loop of unfinished business. The whispers grew louder, and my nights became filled with nightmares of the store. In my dreams, I saw Jessica, her ghostly figure gliding through the aisles, endlessly working. Each time I woke up, I felt more exhausted, more drawn into her world. One night, I confided in Mark about my dreams. "Maybe she's trying to tell you something," he suggested. "Some people think she's still here because she wants to protect the store." "Protect it from what?" I asked, feeling the weight of his words. "From becoming just another retail space, losing its humanity," he replied thoughtfully. "Maybe she's watching over us." I could no longer ignore the phantom's presence. One night, I gathered the courage to confront Jessica. I set up a small memorial in the stockroom, a few flowers and a photo of her from an old newspaper article. "Jessica," I whispered into the quiet darkness, "if you can hear me, I want to help you find peace." The atmosphere shifted around me. I felt a cold breeze sweep through the room, and the lights flickered. A soft glow illuminated the edges of the stockroom, and there she was, hovering before me. "Help me." Her voice was a whisper, filled with sorrow. I took a deep breath. "What do you need? How can I help you?" She pointed towards the back of the stockroom, and I followed her gaze. There, nestled among the boxes, was an old, dusty cart filled with forgotten products. "Finish my last shift," she whispered, and I understood. Working alongside Jessica's spirit, I began restocking the forgotten items. With each product I placed on the shelves, I felt a connection to her, as if I was helping her finish what she had started. I realized that Jessica was not just haunting the store. She was trying to maintain its spirit, keep it alive. As I worked, Jessica's presence grew stronger. I could feel her gratitude, her relief. It was as if she was thanking me with every item I placed on the shelves. But then the shadows began to stir again. I sensed a malevolence creeping into the store, something darker that had been waiting for its moment to strike. I needed to find a way to protect Jessica, to help her find peace. After a few nights of restocking, I organized a small vigil for Jessica, inviting my coworkers to join me. We gathered in the stockroom, sharing stories of her dedication and spirit. As we lit candles and offered flowers, I felt Jessica's presence surround us, a gentle warmth that filled the air. The shadows receded, and for the first time, the store felt alive with her spirit. At the end of the vigil, I turned to the group. "Let's not forget her," I said, my voice steady. "Jessica deserves to be remembered." As we stood together, the phantom appeared one last time, her eyes glistening with tears of gratitude. She looked at each of us, then smiled, and for the first time, I saw her free from the burdens that had bound her. In the days that followed, I noticed a change in the store. The whispers faded, replaced by a sense of calm and community among the employees. We shared laughs, stories, and the camaraderie that had been lacking before. Mark and I became closer, sharing shifts and looking out for one another. I felt a renewed sense of purpose in my work, understanding the importance of connection, both to each other and to those we had lost. I found strength in my relationship with my family as well, reaching out to them more and sharing my experiences. They began to understand my job wasn't just a way to make ends meet. It was part of my journey to find my place in the world. Months later, I stood in the stockroom, reflecting on how far I had come. The store felt different now, lighter and full of life. Jessica's spirit was at peace, her presence a gentle reminder of the importance of kindness and community. I embraced my late-night shifts, finding joy in the work and the people around me. I would never forget the lessons Jessica had taught me, the bond we had shared. As I stocked the shelves, I glanced towards the back of the stockroom, feeling her warmth surround me. I smiled, knowing that the spirit of the store would live on, nurtured by the love and memories we had created together. Before we move on to the next story, Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment down. Story 3. The automatic doors of Walmart slid open with a familiar hiss, and I stepped into the store for my first shift, the bright fluorescent lights flickering above. I had just graduated college and was eager to start my first job. My heart raced with anticipation and anxiety, a mix of excitement and fear. I was greeted by Mark, a stocky man in his 40s with a salt and pepper beard and a warm smile. "Welcome to Walmart, Emily," he said, extending a calloused hand. "You're gonna love it here." "Thanks, Mark," I replied, shaking his hand. "I hope so." He showed me around the store, pointing out the different sections in the break room where employees gathered during their shifts. I noticed a few night owls stocking shelves and sweeping the floors, their faces weary but friendly. "Just remember, night shifts can get a little strange," Mark warned with a chuckle. "You'll see things that will make you question your sanity." I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. How strange could it be? I was just restocking shelves and ringing up customers. As the hours passed, I settled into my routine, restocking shelves in the snack aisle. The store was relatively quiet, the only sounds being the occasional hum of the intercom and the distant chatter of customers. I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The aisles filled with colorful packaging and the familiar scent of popcorn and cleaning supplies. But as night fell, the atmosphere shifted. The store felt emptier, and the shadows seemed to grow longer. I was alone in the aisle when I heard a rustling noise coming from the frozen food section. I turned to look, but when I approached, everything was still. "Just my imagination," I muttered under my breath, shaking my head. Mark passed by, noticing my unease. "You okay, Emily? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I thought I heard something," I replied, feeling foolish. He chuckled softly. "Just the store settling. You'll get used to it." As my shift continued, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I felt like I was being watched, but whenever I turned, there was nothing but the empty aisles and the flickering lights. The following nights were a blur of restocking and ringing up late-night customers. The whispers began to creep in, soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to echo through the aisles. At first, I brushed them off as my imagination, but they grew louder and more persistent. One evening, as I was sorting through a box of cereal, I heard my name. "Emily." The voice was faint, but clear enough to send chills down my spine. I glanced around, heart racing. "Hello?" I called out, but the aisles were empty. Mark noticed my tension. "You're hearing the whispers, aren't you?" I nodded, unsure how to respond. "What are they?" "The lost ones," he said, lowering his voice. "They linger here, searching for something. Some never leave." My stomach nodded. "What do you mean?" He sighed, glancing around as if ensuring no one was listening. "People have gotten lost in this store over the years, physically and emotionally. They come here looking for comfort, and sometimes they just stay." A few weeks into my job, I met Jessica during one of my shifts. She was a young mother, frazzled and weary, her eyes heavy with fatigue as she pushed her cart through the aisles. I watched her pick up items absent-mindedly, her mind clearly elsewhere. "Can I help you with anything?" I offered, stepping closer. She looked up, startled. "Oh no, I'm just browsing," she said, forcing a smile. I could see the sadness behind her eyes, the weight of her responsibilities pressing down on her. "It's okay. I know it can be overwhelming." She sighed, her guard lowering slightly. "Yeah, it's just hard to find time for myself." As we talked, I learned about her struggles, juggling work, parenting, and the loneliness that came with it. I felt a connection to her, both of us searching for comfort in our own ways. "Sometimes I come here just to escape," she admitted, glancing around the store. "It feels safe, like I'm not alone." Her words resonated with me, echoing Mark's earlier comments. I realized that the store had become a sanctuary for many, a place to hide from the chaos of the outside world. The nights grew darker, and the whispers intensified, almost as if they were calling to me. I began to see fleeting figures out of the corner of my eye, shadows that flickered in the dim light, shapes that seemed to drift between the aisles. One night, while I was restocking the cleaning supplies, I saw a figure standing at the end of the aisle. It was a woman, her head bowed as if searching for something on the floor. I blinked, and she was gone. "Mark!" I shouted, my voice echoing through the empty store. He rushed over, concern etched on his face. "What's wrong?" "I just saw someone, a woman," I stammered, trying to explain. But when I looked again, she disappeared. He nodded slowly, as if this was something he had encountered before. "That's one of the lost ones," he said softly. "They can appear when they feel lost or trapped. Sometimes they're looking for something they lost. Other times, they don't even know why they're here." My heart raced. "What do we do? Can we help them?" Mark looked thoughtful. "Sometimes just acknowledging them is enough, but they can also be drawn to those who are lost themselves." As I continued my shifts, I became more attuned to the lost ones. I would catch glimpses of them in the aisles, always just out of reach, always shrouded in shadows. It felt like they were watching me, as if they recognized something within me, a kindred spirit. I confided in Jessica about my experiences. "I see them, Jess," I said, my voice trembling. "These shadowy figures. I think they're lost, just like us." She listened intently, her expression serious. "Maybe they're trying to tell us something. Maybe they want us to help them. But how? What can we do?" I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of it all. Jessica reached out, placing a hand on my arm. "We need to face our own fears first. Only then can we help others." Her words stuck with me as I continued to encounter the lost ones. Each night, they seemed to grow more desperate, their whispers more urgent. I realized I had to confront my own fears and insecurities to help them find peace. Determined to uncover the truth about the lost ones, I delved into the store's history. I discovered reports of disappearances, customers who had entered the store and never returned. Their stories were buried in old news articles and whispers among the employees. One night, I found Mark in the break room, a look of worry on his face. "You've been researching the history of this place, haven't you?" he asked. I nodded, feeling a sense of urgency. "There are so many stories of people who vanished. It's like they got lost in the aisles." He sighed heavily. "This store has a way of trapping people. It feeds on their insecurities and fears. We need to find a way to help them move on. What if we organized a vigil for them? A way to acknowledge their pain and help them find peace?" I suggested, feeling a spark of hope. Mark considered it for a moment. "It's worth a shot, but be prepared. It may not be easy." We organized a vigil for the lost ones, inviting our coworkers and customers to participate. As we lit candles and shared stories, I felt a sense of connection to everyone there. It was a moment of unity, acknowledging the struggles we all faced. The atmosphere shifted as we spoke, the air thick with emotion. I could feel the presence of the lost ones surrounding us, their whispers growing louder. It was as if they were drawn to our shared experiences, the pain and hope that resonated in the air. As we finished, I closed my eyes and reached out to the lost ones. "You're not alone. We see you. We honor your struggles and pain," I said, my voice steady. "You can find peace." For a moment, the store felt lighter. The shadows receding as if acknowledging our efforts. I sensed a change in the atmosphere, a feeling of relief that washed over us. The night following the vigil was unlike any other. As I stocked shelves, the lost ones began to emerge from the shadows, their forms more defined, their whispers more insistent. I felt a pull toward them, a sense of urgency to understand their plight. I followed one of the figures deeper into the store, my heart racing. She led me to the electronics section, where the glow of the screens illuminated her face. It was the woman I had seen before, her expression filled with sorrow. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I'm lost," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't find my way home." I reached out, desperation rising within me. "We're trying to help you. You don't have to be lost anymore." But before I could reach her, she faded into the darkness, leaving me alone in the aisle. Panic surged through me, and I turned to run back to the break room. As the days passed, the lost ones grew more restless. Their whispers echoed in my mind, haunting me during the day and intensifying during the night. I felt trapped in a cycle of fear and uncertainty, questioning my ability to help them. I confided in Jessica one night during our break. "I don't know how to help them. They're all around me, and I can't reach them." "You have to confront your own fears first," she urged. "What are you afraid of?" I took a deep breath, contemplating her words. "I'm afraid of failing, of not being enough." Her gaze softened. "We all feel that way sometimes, but you have the power to change things. You just have to believe in yourself." Her encouragement sparked something within me, and I knew I had to face my fears head-on. I needed to confront the lost ones and help them find peace, not just for them but for myself as well. The night of the final confrontation arrived, and I felt a mix of determination and fear. I gathered my courage and stepped into the store. The familiar fluorescent lights flickering ominously overhead. The lost ones emerged from the shadows, their forms more defined than ever. "I see you," I called out, my voice steady. "You're not alone. We can help each other." The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices echoing through the aisles. I could feel their pain and desperation, and it fueled my resolve. As I moved deeper into the store, I could see the faces of the lost ones, each one reflecting the struggles and pain they had endured. I reached out to them, my heart open. "You don't have to be lost anymore. We can find our way together." In that moment, something shifted. The air grew thick with energy as the lost ones began to step closer, drawn to my words. They formed a circle around me, their whispers blending into a harmonious chorus of hope and understanding. As the dawn broke, a sense of calm enveloped the store. The lost ones had found their peace, their forms fading into the light as they finally moved on. I stood in the middle of the aisle, feeling a weight lifted off my shoulders. Mark joined me, his expression a mix of relief and pride. "You did it, Emily. You helped them find their way." "I couldn't have done it without Jessica and you," I replied, my voice filled with gratitude. "We all found strength in each other." The atmosphere in the store shifted, the shadows retreating as the first light of day filtered through the windows. I felt a sense of renewal, a realization that I was no longer lost in my own fears. In the months that followed, I continued my work at Walmart, but the experience had changed me. I formed deeper connections with my coworkers and customers, understanding the importance of community and support. Jessica and I became close friends, sharing our struggles and triumphs as we navigated the challenges of life. We often met for coffee, exchanging stories and laughter, our bond strengthening with each passing day. I realized that the lost ones had not only helped themselves, but had also guided me toward a path of self-discovery. I had found my voice, my purpose, and a newfound appreciation for the connections we make in life. As I stocked shelves late one night, I glanced around the store, now filled with warmth and light. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, knowing that I had faced my fears and helped others find their way. Story 4. It was the kind of night that felt thick and oppressive, the air heavy with anticipation. I had just started my job at Walmart, a necessary evil for a college student trying to make ends meet. I remember stepping through the sliding doors for the first time, the automatic sensors chiming softly as I entered. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow over the vast expanse of aisles stretching endlessly before me. "Welcome aboard." My manager, Tom, greeted me with a wide smile, revealing a set of crooked teeth that added to his charm. "You're gonna love it here. Just stick to the night shifts. That's when the magic happens." I nodded, unsure if he was joking or not. My first night was a whirlwind of tasks, stocking shelves, cleaning the aisles, and familiarizing myself with the layout of the store. I was particularly assigned to the clothing section, where the mannequins stood proudly, adorned in the latest styles. They had always intrigued me, the way they seemed to hold their poses, as if frozen in time. But there was something unsettling about them, an almost lifelike quality that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that their painted eyes were following me as I moved about. "Hey, don't let them get to you," Mike, a fellow employee, said with a smirk as he approached. He was in his 20s, with a messy mop of dark hair and a laid-back demeanor. "They're just plastic, unless you're scared of mannequins, that is." I chuckled nervously. "I'm not scared, just curious." "Curiosity killed the cat, you know," he teased. "But seriously, if you hear any strange noises tonight, just ignore them. This place has a history of odd occurrences." "What kind of odd occurrences?" I asked, my interest piqued. "Just weird stuff," he shrugged. "Like last week, I swear one of the mannequins changed positions while I was restocking. I turned my back for a second, and when I looked again, it was facing the opposite direction." I laughed, dismissing his story as a joke. "You must have been tired." "Maybe," he replied, his smile fading slightly. But you'll see, there's something off about this place at night. As the hours dragged on, the store grew quieter, the sounds of distant footsteps echoing through the empty aisles. The fluorescent lights flickered sporadically, casting unsettling shadows that danced along the walls. I tried to focus on my tasks, but the feeling of being watched crept back in. It was nearing midnight when I found myself restocking clothes in the women's section, the mannequins standing sentinel at the end of the aisle. They were eerily lifelike, their glassy eyes reflecting the harsh lights above. I felt an inexplicable urge to look away, but my gaze was drawn to the one in the center, a mannequin dressed in a sleek black dress, its expression serene yet unsettling. "Sarah," Mike called from a nearby aisle. I turned to see him leaning against a rack, an amused grin on his face. "You look like you're about to jump out of your skin. Relax, they can't hurt you." I rolled my eyes but couldn't help the tension that coiled in my stomach. "Right, just a bunch of plastic." As I turned back to my work, I heard a faint rustling noise behind me. I froze, heart pounding in my chest. The mannequins, still and silent, seemed to loom larger in the dim light. "Did you hear that?" I whispered to Mike, my voice trembling slightly. "Hear what?" he asked, nonchalantly inspecting a stack of jeans. "Never mind," I said, shaking my head. "Just my imagination." But as I resumed my restocking, the noise persisted, a soft whisper, almost like a breeze through the aisles. I glanced back at the mannequins, and for a fleeting moment, I thought one of them had shifted slightly, the serene smile almost appearing sinister. "Okay, this is getting weird," I said, forcing a laugh to mask my unease. Mike shrugged. "It's just the air conditioning. It can get pretty drafty in here. I told you, just ignore it." I nodded, but my eyes remained glued to the mannequin in the black dress. There was something hauntingly beautiful about it, something that drew me in. As I moved to the next rack, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. The clock ticked on, and the store grew eerily silent. I was lost in my thoughts, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in my bones. Just as I reached for a sweater on the top shelf, the lights flickered once more, plunging the aisle into darkness for a brief moment. Not again," I muttered, rolling my eyes as the light stabilized. But when I turned back, the mannequin was no longer facing the aisle. It had turned its head slightly, as if to look directly at me. "Mike," I called, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can you come here for a second?" "What's up?" he replied, strolling over with a bemused look on his face. "Look," I pointed at the mannequin, my heart racing. It was just facing me. Mike glanced at the mannequin, then back at me. "You're imagining things. It's just a mannequin, Sarah." I shook my head, trying to rationalize it. "No, I swear it moved. I saw it." "Okay, let's say it did," he said, a playful smirk on his face. "Maybe it's trying to tell you something, like, get a life, Sarah." I couldn't help but laugh, but it was a weak laugh, filled with nerves. Very funny. As Mike walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I glanced back at the mannequin, the soft whisper echoing in my mind. It felt as if the store itself was alive, its aisles twisting and turning in ways I couldn't comprehend. A few nights passed, and the strange occurrences continued. Each shift, I found myself drawn to the mannequin in the black dress. There was something about it that felt familiar, a connection that I couldn't explain. It was as if the mannequin held a secret, a part of itself that resonated with me. One evening, while I was restocking the men's section, I overheard a conversation between two customers. They were discussing the store's history, particularly an incident involving a former employee who had mysteriously vanished. The words echoed in my mind. "Some say she still roams the aisles, searching for something lost." I felt a chill run down my spine. Searching for something lost. I whispered to myself, the words resonating within me. Later that night, I confided in Mike as we took a break in the dimly lit break room. "Have you ever heard about the girl who went missing?" I asked, biting my lip. He looked thoughtful. "Yeah, it was a big deal a while back. They say she was last seen in the store. I think she worked in the clothing section too." "Do you think it's possible she became a mannequin?" I asked, half joking, half serious. He chuckled, but quickly grew serious. "If it were me, I wouldn't want to think about it. But this place does have its creepy moments." With every shift, the tension escalated. The mannequin seemed to watch me more intently, so that its expression changing subtly as if it were absorbing my fears. I felt an inexplicable pull, a need to uncover the truth behind its eerie presence. As I arrived for my shift one night, the store felt different, charged with an energy I couldn't quite place. The aisles loomed larger, shadows stretching and twisting in the flickering light. My heart raced as I approached the clothing section, feeling the familiar tension creep back in. "Ready for another night of fun?" Mike teased as he joined me, but his voice held an edge of uncertainty. "Let's hope it's not too weird tonight," I replied, trying to match his lightheartedness. As we worked, the whispers returned, softer this time but undeniable. They wrapped around me, a haunting melody that seemed to come from all directions. The mannequins stood silently, their glassy eyes reflecting the harsh lights above. I could feel their presence like a weight on my chest. "Hey, do you want to check out that old stockroom? I heard there are some creepy mannequins back there," Mike suggested, trying to lighten the mood. I hesitated, the thought sending a jolt of fear through me. "Do we have to?" "Come on, where's your sense of adventure?" he pressed, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Finally, I relented, the pull of curiosity stronger than my fear. We made our way through the winding aisles until we found the door to the stockroom. It creaked open, revealing a dimly lit space filled with old displays and dusty mannequins. The atmosphere shifted as we stepped inside. The air was thick, tinged with an unsettling silence. I shivered as I glanced around, my heart racing. In the back corner stood a collection of mannequins, their features worn and faded. One of them, a woman in a vintage dress, caught my eye. "It looks like something out of a horror movie," Mike joked, but his voice wavered. "Let's just grab what we need and go," I replied, my voice trembling. As we rummaged through the shelves, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I turned to look at the vintage mannequin again, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a flicker of movement. My breath caught in my throat. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "See what?" Mike asked, looking puzzled. "Never mind," I replied, trying to dismiss it as my imagination. But as we left the stockroom, I felt a cold chill run down my spine. The whispers grew louder, almost beckoning me back. The next few nights felt like a blur. I was consumed by the feeling of being watched, the mannequins in the store becoming more alive with each passing shift. I found myself drawn back to the vintage mannequin, its presence haunting my thoughts. "What's with you and that mannequin?" Mike asked one night, teasing me as we took our break. "You act like it's your long-lost friend." "It just feels different," I replied, unable to articulate the connection I felt. "Like it's trying to tell me something." He shrugged, but his eyes held a glint of concern. "You know, you can't let your imagination run wild. It's just a mannequin." But deep down, I felt there was more to the story. I began to research the history of the store during my breaks, uncovering old newspaper articles about the girl who had gone missing. Emily. She had been last seen wearing a black dress, similar to the one on the mannequin. As I pieced together the information, I felt a sense of urgency. Emily had vanished without a trace, and the more I learned, the more the whispers in the store seemed to echo her name. One night, while working late, I found myself in the clothing section alone. The store was eerily quiet, the faint rustle of clothing the only sound. I approached the mannequin, my heart racing. "Emily?" I whispered, feeling foolish but compelled to speak. To my shock, the air around me shifted, and I felt a rush of cold air sweep through the aisle. The mannequin's eyes seemed to glimmer in the dim light, and I could have sworn its expression shifted, softening for a moment. "Help me," I thought I heard in a faint whisper, sending chills down my spine. "Emily?" I whispered again, my heart pounding. "Is that you?" The lights flickered, casting shadows that danced across the aisle. I felt a mix of fear and determination as I stepped closer, drawn to the mannequin that seemed to hold the key to Emily's fate. The following shifts became a blur of determination and dread. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was meant to help Emily find peace. The whispers grew more urgent, their tones shifting from despair to pleading. One night, as I was restocking, Mike joined me, looking a bit more serious than usual. "I've been thinking about what you said, about that mannequin," he said, glancing over his shoulder as if ensuring no one was listening. "What about it?" I asked, my heart racing. "I think we should do something," he said, his eyes serious. If that girl is still here, we need to find a way to help her. I nodded, feeling a surge of hope. What if we set up a small memorial? Something to acknowledge her, to let her know she's not forgotten. Yeah, that could work, Mike agreed. But we have to do it discreetly. We don't want to freak out the customers. That night, we gathered candles, flowers, and a small photo of Emily I had printed from the articles. We set up the makeshift memorial at the foot of the mannequin, lighting the candles and placing the flowers around her feet. The air felt charged with energy, and I could sense the whispers around us growing softer, as if they were watching and waiting. As we finished, I closed my eyes and whispered, "You're not alone, Emily. We're here for you." Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and a cold wind swept through the aisle. The candles flickered wildly, and I felt a chill grip my heart. I turned to Mike, fear etched on my face. "What was that?" "I don't know," he replied, glancing around nervously. "But we need to get out of here." Just as we were about to leave, the mannequin seemed to shift, its head tilting slightly as if acknowledging our presence. I felt a surge of emotion, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. "Thank you," I heard in a whisper, clear as day, echoing in the stillness. The days passed, and the store grew quieter as the whispers faded. I felt a sense of calm wash over me, but the connection with Emily lingered. I was determined to uncover the truth about her disappearance, to give her the closure she deserved. One night, I stayed late after my shift, poring over old newspapers and articles in the break room. I came across a detailed report about Emily's case, detailing the circumstances of her last known whereabouts. She had been seen entering the store, but no one had ever seen her leave. My heart raced as I read the final lines. Witnesses reported seeing a mannequin in the window that night, eerily resembling Emily. I felt a chill wash over me. It was as if the pieces of the puzzle were coming together, revealing a haunting truth. Determined to confront the reality of the situation, I returned to the clothing section, the memories of Emily weighing heavily on my heart. The mannequin stood silently, but I felt a sense of comfort in its presence. "Emily," I said softly, my voice trembling, "I'm going to find out what happened to you, I promise." As I reached out to touch the cold plastic, a rush of emotion flooded through me. Fear, sadness, and an overwhelming desire to help. I could feel Emily's spirit lingering, a soft whisper echoing in the silence, urging me to continue my search. The following nights became a frantic search for the truth. I researched every detail about the store's history, digging into archives and reaching out to former employees. I discovered that strange occurrences had plagued the store for years, with reports of mannequins moving and customers feeling watched. One night, I found myself in the stockroom again, sifting through old boxes and dusty items. As I rummaged through, I stumbled upon a faded scrapbook filled with newspaper clippings and photos of former employees. There in the center was a photograph of Emily. She was smiling, radiating warmth and joy. But as I turned the page, my heart sank. I found a newspaper clipping dated the day after her disappearance, the headline screaming about her fate. "Local girl missing, last seen at Walmart." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me as I read the details. According to the article, Emily had been reported missing after failing to return home from her shift. It described how her family had searched for her tirelessly, but she had simply vanished. Why didn't anyone help her? I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks. As I closed the scrapbook, I heard a soft rustling sound behind me. My heart raced as I turned around, expecting to see Mike or another employee. But the stockroom was empty, the only sound the distant hum of the store's cooling system. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness. I felt a cold breeze pass through me, a sensation of being watched. I quickly grabbed my phone, the screen illuminating the space around me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. "Is anyone there?" But the only response was silence, heavy and suffocating. I felt a presence behind me, a lingering energy that sent chills down my spine. "Emily?" I whispered, feeling foolish but desperate for an answer. In that moment, I saw a fleeting figure in the corner of my eye. I turned, but there was nothing there. My heart raced, and I bolted out of the stockroom, stumbling back into the safety of the aisles. Determined to face the truth, I gathered my courage and returned to the clothing section that night. I stood before the mannequin, my heart pounding in my chest. "Emily, if you're here, I need your help," I said, my voice steady. As I reached out to touch the mannequin again, I felt an overwhelming wave of emotion wash over me, a mix of sadness, longing, and despair. "I want to help you find peace," I whispered, feeling the energy in the air shift. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, casting ominous shadows across the aisle. The whispers returned, louder this time, swirling around me like a tempest. "Help me," a voice echoed, clearer than before. "Where are you?" I called out, my heart racing. "What do you need from me?" The mannequin's eyes seemed to glimmer with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. I could feel the weight of Emily's spirit surrounding me, urging me to uncover the truth of her fate. "Follow me." The whisper beckoned, and I felt an inexplicable pull toward the stockroom once more. With each step, the air grew heavier, thick with anticipation. As I entered the stockroom, I felt a surge of energy, the shadows around me swirling as if alive. "Show me," I whispered, desperate for answers. Suddenly, a vision flashed before my eyes, a memory of Emily standing in the stockroom, panic etched on her face. I could see the moment she had vanished, the shadows closing in around her. "Help me," the voice echoed, but this time it was accompanied by a feeling of despair. "No," I shouted, realizing what had happened. "You're trapped here." The lights flickered again, the whispers rising to a crescendo. I could feel Emily's presence growing stronger, her spirit reaching out to me. With a newfound determination, I raced back to the clothing section, my heart racing. I stood before the mannequin, feeling a surge of energy coursing through me. "I won't let you be forgotten, Emily. I promise I'll help you find peace." As I spoke, the lights flickered one last time, plunging the aisle into darkness. I could feel a cold wind wrapping around me, and the whispers grew louder, urging me to act. "Help me," the voice cried, the desperation echoing in my mind. In that moment, I understood. I needed to confront the truth of what had happened to her. I had to let the world know her story. "Tonight, I'll tell your story," I whispered, my voice steady. "I'll make sure everyone knows who you were." The whispers began to fade, replaced by a soft warmth enveloping me. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, and the tension in the air dissipated. "Thank you," the voice murmured, and I felt the presence of Emily's spirit lingering, finally at rest. The following weeks passed, and I worked tirelessly to share Emily's story. I reached out to local news outlets, sharing the details of her disappearance and the haunting connection I had felt with her. Slowly, the story gained traction, and the community began to remember Emily. They held vigils in her honor, a way to acknowledge her life and the loss her family had endured. As I walked through the store one night, I felt a sense of peace enveloping me. The mannequins stood silently, but this time, I felt their presence as guardians rather than watchers. I approached the mannequin in the black dress and smiled. "Thank you for trusting me," I whispered. "You're free now." As I turned to leave, I felt a gentle breeze brush past me, a whisper of gratitude lingering in the air. I stepped out of the clothing section, the weight of the past finally lifted. With each passing day, the store felt brighter, the shadows retreating as the memory of Emily lived on in the hearts of those who remembered her. I knew I would never forget the lessons I had learned, the importance of connection, the power of stories, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. And in the quiet of the night, I could still hear her whispers, a reminder that love transcends even the darkest of places. Story 5. It was a typical Monday morning at Maplewood High School, where the scent of cafeteria food mingled with the anxious buzz of students rushing to their classes. I shuffled into the crowded hall, my backpack slung over one shoulder, barely paying attention to the usual chatter and laughter. But today felt different. An undercurrent of unease hung in the air. "Did you hear about the announcement?" a voice whispered behind me. I turned to see Sarah, a girl from my biology class, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. "What announcement?" I asked, feeling a sudden chill creep down my spine. "They're going to announce the results of the talent show today during lunch," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But some people are saying something weird is going to happen." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued but skeptical. "Weird? Like what?" "I don't know, but last week I overheard Mr. Thompson talking to the principal. They seemed really serious about it," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. I brushed it off, laughing a little. Come on, it's just a talent show. What could possibly go wrong? But as I walked to my first class, the unease settled deeper in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about today. The day dragged on, every class feeling like an eternity. I couldn't concentrate on anything but the upcoming announcement. My friends, Jamie and Alex, were equally curious but skeptical. It's probably just a prank, Jamie said during lunch as we sat at our usual table. You know how these things go. Yeah, but what if it's not? Alex chimed in, glancing nervously at the clock. What if they really are going to announce something strange? I laughed, trying to ease the tension. Whatever it is, I'm sure it'll just be a boring update about the talent show. But as the minutes ticked by, the excitement around me grew. Students crowded near the stage in the cafeteria, their whispers echoing through the air like a swarm of bees. The anticipation was palpable, and I could feel the electricity in the room. When the clock struck noon, Mr. Anderson, the principal, stepped up to the microphone, his face serious. A hush fell over the crowd. Students of Maplewood High, thank you for gathering here today, he began, his voice steady but heavy. We have some important news regarding the talent show and a special announcement. The air shifted, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. Something about his tone sent alarm bells ringing in my head. As many of you know, this year's talent show has attracted more participants than ever before, Mr. Anderson continued, glancing nervously at the audience. We're thrilled to announce that this year's show will be different. We will be incorporating a new element, a challenge for the contestants that has never been done before. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. What kind of challenge? Someone shouted. Mr. Anderson took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the audience. We will be inviting a special guest judge who will not only be judging performances, but will also set a unique challenge that will test your limits. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could feel my heart racing. What did he mean by test your limits? As for the nature of the challenge, Mr. Anderson hesitated, and the silence deepened. It will be revealed later tonight in an online announcement. I urge everyone to stay safe and prepared. With that, he stepped down, leaving a stunned crowd in his wake. The cafeteria erupted into chaos as students began shouting questions, excitement, and fear mixing into a volatile mix. Did you hear that? Sarah exclaimed, her eyes wide. What kind of challenge could it be? I don't know, I replied, my heart pounding. But I have a bad feeling about this. As the day wore on, whispers of the announcement spread like wildfire. Everyone had their theories about what the challenge could entail, and the tension in the school escalated. Some claimed it would involve physical challenges, while others suggested it might be something psychological. I heard it could involve some kind of psychological test, Jamie said, her voice shaky as we sat in the library during study hall. Like, something to test how far you're willing to go. That sounds ridiculous, Alex scoffed, but he didn't sound as confident as he wanted to appear. They wouldn't do anything dangerous. But I wasn't so sure. I could still feel the weight of Mr. Anderson's words hanging over us like a dark cloud. The thought of something sinister lurking beneath the surface sent chills down my spine. As the final bell rang, students filed out of the school, buzzing with anticipation and anxiety. I lingered behind, glancing around as if expecting something, or someone, to jump out at me. I'm heading home, Jamie said, her voice tight. See you guys later? Yeah, see you, I replied, watching her walk away before turning back to Alex. Want to check out the online announcement? I suggested, unable to shake the feeling of unease. Sure, he agreed reluctantly. Let's just get this over with. That evening, I settled onto my bed with my laptop, Alex beside me, the glow of the screen illuminating our faces. My heart raced as I navigated to the school's website, where the live stream of the announcement was set to begin. Are you ready for this? Alex asked, nervously glancing at the clock. Not really, I admitted, biting my lip. But we need to know what's going on. As the clock struck 7, the screen flickered to life, revealing Mr. Anderson sitting in front of the camera. The tension was palpable as he cleared his throat, his expression grave. Good evening, students of Maplewood High, he began, his voice steady. Tonight, I'm here to explain the details of the challenge you will face in the upcoming talent show. I leaned closer, my breath hitching as the words spilled from his mouth. The challenge is called the creeping announcement. Each contestant will be given a series of tasks to complete throughout the evening of the talent show. These tasks will test your creativity, endurance, and mental fortitude. I exchanged a worried glance with Alex. This doesn't sound good. As the evening progresses, the challenges will become progressively more difficult, Mr. Anderson continued, his voice echoing with an ominous tone. But there's one important rule. Once the challenge begins, you cannot back out. You must see it through to the end. A hush fell over the room as the weight of his words sank in. I could feel my heart racing, the unease clawing at my chest. Each task will be announced through a series of videos that will be played at random intervals throughout the night, he explained. You will have no idea when the next challenge will come, nor what it will entail. The screen flickered as the announcement came to an end, leaving us in a stunned silence. "This is insane," I whispered, feeling the weight of dread settle heavily over me. "What if something goes wrong?" "I don't know," Alex replied, his voice strained. "But I'm not sure if I want to be a part of this anymore." As the days passed, the excitement surrounding the talent show grew. Students were buzzing with nervous energy, some eager to take on the challenge, while others were consumed by fear. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. I confided in Sarah, who shared my concerns. "Do you think they'll really let it go too far?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, my stomach churning. "But I feel like we should warn people. This doesn't feel right." We decided to talk to Mr. Thompson, our history teacher, hoping he might shed some light on the situation. "Mr. Thompson," I said hesitantly after class one day, "do you know anything about the talent show announcement?" He looked at us with concern, his brow furrowing. "I've heard the rumors, but I assure you that the school would never put students in real danger." "But what if something happens?" Sarah pressed, her voice urgent. "What if someone gets hurt?" Mr. Thompson sighed, rubbing his temples. "I understand your concerns, but the school has protocols in place. Just be careful and look out for each other." As we left his classroom, I felt a sense of foreboding settle over me. "We have to stay vigilant," I told Sarah. "I just have this feeling that something is going to go horribly wrong." The night of the talent show arrived, and the atmosphere in the school gym was electric with anticipation. The stage was adorned with colorful lights, and the chatter of students filled the air. But amidst the excitement, I could feel a dark cloud looming over us. "Are you ready for this?" Alex asked, glancing around nervously. "Not really," I admitted, my stomach in knots. "But we have to do it together." The first few acts went smoothly, laughter and applause echoing throughout the gym. But as the clock approached 9, I felt a sudden shift in the atmosphere. It was as if the energy in the room had changed, darkening with an unsettling intensity. The first video played, and a hush fell over the crowd. A distorted image appeared on the screen, flickering as a voice echoed through the gym. "Welcome to the creeping announcement. Your first challenge is to face your fears. Each contestant must confront their greatest fear within the next 10 minutes. Gasps filled the room as the contestants exchanged panicked glances. "What does that even mean?" someone shouted. As the timer started, a sense of dread washed over me. I could feel the weight of the challenge pressing down on us, and I could see fear etched on the faces of my classmates. One by one, contestants stepped up to face their fears, but it quickly became evident that the challenges were more intense than anyone had anticipated. The first contestant was a sophomore named Lisa, who had always struggled with public speaking. As she stood on stage, her hands trembling, the audience watched with bated breath. "Just breathe," I whispered to myself, my heart racing. Lisa took a deep breath and began to speak, but as her voice wavered, the lights flickered ominously. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from backstage, causing the audience to jump. "What was that?" someone exclaimed, panic rippling through the crowd. Ignoring the chaos, Lisa pressed on, but the shadows around her began to grow, creeping along the stage as if alive. The atmosphere turned oppressive, the energy in the room shifting dangerously. Just as she reached the climax of her speech, the lights dimmed completely, plunging the gym into darkness. A collective gasp filled the room, and my heart raced. "Someone turn the lights back on." I I shouted, panic rising within me. A flicker of light returned, but it was accompanied by a chilling whisper that echoed through the gym. Face your fears. The audience erupted into chaos as students scrambled for the exits, fear taking hold. I looked at Alex, my heart pounding. We have to stay together. As the chaos unfolded, I felt a sense of urgency to find out what was happening. The second challenge had begun, and the contestants were forced to confront their fears in increasingly bizarre and unsettling ways. The lights flickered again, illuminating the faces of my classmates twisted in fear. I could hear screams and cries as students succumbed to the pressure, each grappling with their worst nightmares. Is this part of the challenge? I asked Alex, my voice shaking. I don't think so, he replied, glancing around nervously. This feels wrong. A chilling realization hit me. The challenges were not just tests of courage, but manifestations of something darker, something that thrived on our fears. As I scanned the room, my eyes landed on Sarah, who was backed against a wall, her face pale. I rushed over to her, concern flooding my heart. Are you okay? No, she breathed, trembling. I can't take this anymore. We have to get out of here. Not without everyone else, I replied, determination pushing back the fear. We need to find Jamie and get out. We navigated through the chaos, the air thick with panic as students pushed and shoved their way toward the exits. The lights flickered again, and I could feel an oppressive presence closing in around us. Over there, I shouted, spotting Jamie near the back of the gym. I rushed toward her, grabbing her arm. We need to leave. Not yet, she protested, her eyes wide with fear. I have to face my challenge. Are you crazy? I replied, pulling her toward the exit. This isn't a game anymore. But she shook her head, determination etched on her face. I can't let my fear control me. I need to do this. With a heavy heart, I stepped back, knowing I couldn't force her to leave. Just be careful, okay? As I watched her walk back toward the stage, I felt a knot of fear tighten in my stomach. What if this was too much for her? Jamie stood at the center of the stage, her face pale but resolute. The lights dimmed again, and the next challenge began. The voice echoed through the gym, distorted and haunting. Your next challenge is to confront a darkness within yourself. Suddenly, the shadows on stage coiled around Jamie, twisting and writhing as if alive. She gasped, struggling against the darkness that threatened to engulf her. No, I shouted, desperation surging through me. Jamie. I watched helplessly as she fought against the encroaching shadows, her body trembling as she faced her fears. But I could see the struggle in her eyes. She was losing the battle. The whispers grew louder, drowning out the chaos in the gym. Face the darkness, embrace it. No, you can't. I screamed, panic clawing at my throat, but the darkness consumed her, and I felt a piece of my soul shatter as I witnessed her despair. Jamie, I cried, racing toward the stage as the shadows closed in. I could feel the darkness clawing at my mind, threatening to drag me under as I fought to reach her. Help me, she cried, her voice barely audible over the chaos. I felt a surge of adrenaline as I reached her, grasping her hand tightly. You have to fight it. Remember who you are. The shadows recoiled momentarily, and Jamie's eyes flickered with recognition. You're right, she whispered, determination shining through the fear. I won't let this take me. Together, we pushed back against the darkness, our combined will breaking through the oppressive atmosphere. The shadows shrank away, and as the lights flickered back on, the gym erupted into applause. But the relief was short-lived. I turned to look at the crowd, only to find their faces twisted in fear, eyes wide with terror. The whispers grew louder, and I realized the darkness was not done yet. Mr. Anderson returned to the stage, his expression grave. We apologize for the disturbances. We need to regain control of this event. But the whispers continued, echoing through the gym as the final challenge was announced. Your last challenge is to face your greatest fear, together. The audience fell silent, a collective gasp echoing through the room. What does that even mean? I asked Alex, panic rising within me. It means we're all in this together, he replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around us. As we stood together, the shadows thickened, creeping toward us as if seeking to ensnare us all. I could feel the energy shifting, an overwhelming sense of dread enveloping the room. Stay close, I whispered to Jamie and Sarah. We need to stick together. But as the darkness closed in, the whispers grew louder, drowning out the voices of my friends. I could feel my own fears creeping up, threatening to overwhelm me. "Face your fears. Face the darkness," the voice echoed, and I felt the shadows swirl around us. As the darkness consumed us, I closed my eyes, focusing on the bond between my friends. I could feel their presence, a reminder that we were not alone. "Together," I whispered, and I felt a surge of strength as we linked hands. The shadows twisted and writhed around us, their whispers clawing at my mind. "You cannot escape. You cannot fight." But I refused to give in. I summoned all my strength, pushing back against the darkness. "We will face this together." The shadows recoiled, the whispers fading as a warm light enveloped us. I opened my eyes, and to my surprise, the darkness began to retreat. The gym was alive with light, illuminating the faces of my friends. We had faced the darkness together, and we had emerged victorious. As the lights flickered back on, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The fear that had gripped the room dissipated, replaced by a palpable sense of relief. Mr. Anderson stepped back on stage, his expression softer now. "Thank you for your courage, students. You have proven that together, you can face your fears." The applause was thunderous, but I could still feel the weight of what had happened lingering in the air. "Are you okay?" I asked Jamie, concern flooding my voice. "Yeah," she replied, a shaky smile on her face. "Thanks for being there." As we stepped off the stage, I felt a sense of camaraderie among my classmates. We had faced something dark together, and it had forged a bond that would never be broken. In the days that followed, the school slowly returned to normal. The talent show was remembered as a night of terror and triumph, a testament to the strength of our community. I found myself reflecting on that night, the darkness we had faced, and the lessons we had learned. We had confronted our fears, not just as individuals, but as a united front. And in doing so, we had discovered a resilience we never knew we possessed. As I walked through the school halls, I felt a sense of belonging. The whispers that once filled my mind had faded, replaced by a sense of hope. "Are you ready for the next talent show?" Alex asked one day, a playful grin on his face. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in days. "Absolutely. But let's hope it's a little less terrifying next time." Though life resumed its normal rhythm, the echoes of that night lingered in the back of my mind. I often found myself reflecting on what had happened and the shadows that had crept through our lives. But instead of fear, I found strength in those memories. We had faced something unimaginable, and we had come out on the other side stronger. "Do you think we'll ever really understand what happened?" Sarah asked one day as we sat in the park. "I don't know," I replied thoughtfully, "but I think it's important to remember what we learned." As I looked around, I saw my friends laughing and sharing stories. The bond we had forged that night would never be forgotten, and it had taught us to face our fears head-on. As time went on, life continued, but the memory of the talent show lingered in the air like a ghost. We had all faced our fears, but what if the darkness returned? What if we have to face it again? Jamie pondered one evening. I smiled, feeling the warmth of her presence beside me. "Then we'll face it together, just like we did before." And as we moved forward, I knew that the strength we had found would guide us through whatever challenges lay ahead. The darkness may creep back into our lives, but we had faced it once, and we could face it again. In the end, it wasn't about the challenges or the darkness that had threatened to consume us. It was about the friendships we forged and the strength we found in each other. And as I looked toward the future, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had faced the creeping announcement, and we had emerged victorious, ready to embrace whatever came next. The shadows may linger, but together we were unstoppable. As we moved on from that fateful night, I realized that life would always hold its challenges, but we would face them together, united in our strength and resilience. And no matter what darkness lay ahead, I knew we would always find our way back into the light. Years later, as I sat reminiscing about our high school days, I understood that the true power lay not in conquering fears, but in the connections we forged. We had faced the darkness, and in doing so, we had lit a path for ourselves and those who would follow. As the sun set on the horizon, I knew that no matter what lay ahead, we were ready to face it together. Story 6. It was just another typical Friday evening at Walmart. the fluorescent lights flickering above as shoppers meandered through the aisles, their carts filled with the week's necessities. I was one of them, feeling the weight of my responsibilities pressing down as I wandered through the store. My name is Mia, and tonight, I was determined to pick up a few things for the week ahead. Groceries, toiletries, and a few snacks for the upcoming movie night with friends. As I turned down the snack aisle, the air felt unusually heavy, almost thick with an unsettling tension. I paused, glancing around at the shelves filled with brightly packaged treats, but a shiver crept down my spine. I shrugged it off, attributing the sensation to my imagination playing tricks on me. I was just tired, after all. But as I continued my shopping, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As I pushed my cart deeper into the store, I noticed the aisles seemed to shift. The shelves appeared taller, the fluorescent lights flickering ominously, and a feeling of claustrophobia began to creep in. I dismissed it as fatigue, but my instincts whispered otherwise. I grabbed a few snacks and headed toward the checkout area, only to find myself lost in a maze of aisles I didn't recognize. It felt as if the store had transformed while I was shopping, the familiar layout replaced by something foreign. The panic started to rise within me. "Excuse me," I called out to a nearby employee, a young man wearing a blue vest. "Can you help me find the checkout?" He turned to face me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. His eyes were hollow, almost lifeless, and a faint smile twisted his lips. "Just follow the aisle," he said, gesturing toward a narrow path ahead. I hesitated, sensing something was off, but I nodded and moved forward. As I walked, I felt as though the aisle was stretching endlessly before me. The shelves towered high on either side, and the fluorescent lights hummed a dissonant tune that sent shivers down my spine. After what felt like an eternity, I reached the end of the aisle, only to find it leading to another aisle that looked remarkably similar to the last. Confused, I turned back, but the path behind me had vanished, replaced by a wall of shelves. I was trapped in this endless labyrinth of aisles. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing eerily in the silence. "Is anyone there?" A chilling laugh echoed back, and I spun around, heart pounding. The employee from before appeared at the end of the aisle, his grin wide and unsettling. "You're almost there," he called, the words dripping with something sinister. "What do you mean?" I shouted, backing away. "Just keep going. The checkout is waiting for you," he replied, stepping closer, his movements unnaturally fluid. Panic surged through me, and I turned to run. I dashed into the next aisle, my heart racing as I desperately sought an exit. The air felt thick, suffocating, and the fluorescent lights overhead flickered more violently as I moved deeper into the store. As I continued to run, the aisles began to blur together, each one more disorienting than the last. I could feel a sense of despair creeping in as I realized the store had become a maze designed to keep me inside. The shelves loomed like sentinels, their contents shifting as I passed. The once familiar products had morphed into grotesque caricatures of themselves. I stumbled into another aisle and froze in horror. The shelves were lined with empty packages, their labels peeling away, the contents long gone. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. "This isn't real," I whispered to myself, trying to maintain a grip on reality. But then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing behind me. I spun around, my heart racing, but the aisle was empty. The oppressive silence returned, amplifying my fear. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, and every instinct screamed at me to find a way out. Just as I began to lose hope, I heard whispers drifting through the air, soft and chilling. I pressed my ear against the shelves, trying to decipher the voices, but they faded as quickly as they had come. The feeling of being trapped intensified, and I turned back to retrace my steps. As I moved, I noticed the atmosphere shifting around me. The aisles felt narrower, the lights dimmer, and the whispers grew louder, wrapping around me like a shroud. They seemed to be calling my name, beckoning me deeper into the store. "Mia, come play with us." The voices were childlike, sweet, yet tainted with a sinister undertone. I shook my head, trying to block them out. "This isn't happening," I yelled, desperation fueling my voice. "I just want to go home." I stumbled into a new aisle, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I looked up to see the sign hanging above, Aisle 7. The shelves were lined with toys, dolls with lifeless eyes staring down at me, their painted smiles grotesque. A shiver raced down my spine as I realized the dolls looked almost human. Suddenly, one of the dolls twitched, its head turning to follow me. I screamed, stumbling backward. The laughter returned, echoing off the walls, and I realized I wasn't alone. "Welcome to aisle 7, a voice chirped, cheerful yet eerie. A figure emerged from behind the shelves, a woman with a frayed uniform and wild hair. "Do you want to play?" "Get away from me," I screamed, bolting down the aisle. But the woman followed, her laughter chilling my bones. I turned into another aisle, desperately searching for an exit, but the store continued to twist and turn, creating an inescapable maze. With every turn I took, the layout of the store seemed to shift, changing like a living creature. I could hear the woman's footsteps growing closer, her laughter mixing with the whispers. Panic clawed at my throat as I rushed past rows of products that morphed and flickered, their labels changing with every heartbeat. "Join us, Mia," the whispers echoed. "Join us forever." I could feel the weight of despair pressing down, suffocating my thoughts. I stumbled into an empty aisle, desperately trying to catch my breath. My mind raced, searching for a way out. "I have to find the exit," I muttered to myself. I pressed on, trying to drown out the chilling laughter that seemed to follow me, echoing through the endless aisles. I had to escape. I had to find the checkout. After what felt like hours, I spotted a flickering light in the distance. Hope surged within me as I moved toward it, my heart pounding with anticipation. But as I approached, I realized it was just another aisle, its end lost in shadows. Then I saw it, a sign labeled checkout. My heart raced as I sprinted toward it, desperate to escape this nightmare. But as I reached the end of the aisle, the light flickered, revealing a horrifying scene. The checkout area was empty, the registers dark and abandoned, but the walls were lined with mirrors, and as I looked into one, I gasped in horror. Reflected back at me was not just my image, but a twisted version of myself, eyes wide and mouth stretching into a cruel smile. "Welcome back, Mia," it whispered, its voice a haunting echo of my own. I stumbled back, fear flooding my veins. The aisles closed in around me, and I realized the truth. I was trapped not just in a store, but in my own mind. The aisle was a manifestation of my fears, and there was no escape. Just then, I felt a presence behind me. I turned slowly, heart pounding in my chest. The woman from aisle 7 stood there, her smile wide and menacing. "You can't leave, Mia. You belong to us now." "No," I shouted, backing away. "I won't let you take me." "Let us show you the truth," she said, her voice dripping with malice. The mirrors around us shimmered, and I was drawn toward them, unable to resist. As I gazed into the glass, visions flooded my mind, moments of fear, regret, and pain from my past. The shadows I had tried to bury resurfaced, and I realized I had to confront them if I ever wanted to escape. With a deep breath, I stepped closer to the mirror. "You don't control me," I yelled, forcing myself to confront the shadows that danced in the glass. "I am not my fears," the woman screeched, her form flickering as I embraced the memories I had tried to forget. I remembered the struggles, the moments of vulnerability that had shaped me, and as I faced them, the shadows began to dissolve. The mirrors shattered, the fragments scattering around me like glass rain. I felt a surge of power as the darkness lifted, and the aisles began to shift again, rearranging themselves before me. I turned and bolted down the newly formed aisle, my heart racing with renewed hope. The oppressive weight lifted as the fluorescent lights began to shine brighter. I could hear the laughter fading behind me, the whispers growing distant. I sprinted toward the end of the aisle, the exit sign glowing ahead. "I'm almost there," I thought, determination flooding my veins. As I reached the entrance, I pushed through the sliding doors, gasping for fresh air as I stepped outside. The night sky greeted me, stars twinkling overhead as if celebrating my escape. Panting, I stood in the parking lot, trembling from the adrenaline coursing through my body. I looked back at the store, the familiar facade now twisted and menacing, but I had escaped. I had faced my fears and confronted the shadows that had haunted me. I knew I would carry the experience with me, a reminder of my strength and resilience. As I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the store still held secrets within its aisles, waiting for the next unsuspecting shopper. The whispers would always echo in my mind, a reminder of what I had overcome. But as I settled into bed, exhaustion washing over me, I closed my eyes with a sense of peace. I had faced the inescapable aisle, and I had emerged stronger. Weeks passed, and life resumed its normal rhythm. But the memories of that night lingered, haunting my thoughts. I avoided the store, opting for smaller shops, but the fear never truly faded. One evening, as I prepared dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from a friend. "Let's go to Walmart later. We need snacks for the movie." My heart raced, panic flooding my mind. I hesitated, the memories flooding back. But deep down, I knew I couldn't let fear control my life. I texted back, "Sure, sounds fun." As I stepped into the store again, the familiar fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, but a sense of foreboding hung in the air. My friends laughed and joked, oblivious to the darkness that had once consumed me. I tried to shake off the memories as we navigated the aisles, but every corner I turned felt like a reminder of the horrors I had faced. When we reached aisle 7, I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. "Mia? You okay?" My friend Sarah asked, concern in her eyes. "Yeah, just a little nostalgic," I replied, forcing a smile. But as I stood there, I realized I could never truly escape the inescapable aisle. The memories would always linger, waiting for me to confront them again. As we gathered our snacks and made our way to the checkout, I felt a familiar weight settle on my shoulders. The whispers crept back into my mind, reminding me of the fear I had faced. "Just ignore it," I whispered to myself. "You're stronger now." But the atmosphere shifted, the air growing thick with dread. The aisle felt longer, the lights dimming as I approached the checkout. I could sense the shadows lurking, waiting to ensnare me once more. As I reached the checkout area, I spotted the same employee from that fateful night. His eyes glimmered with a knowing look, and a smile spread across his face. "Welcome back, Mia," he said, the words dripping with familiarity. I clenched my fists, anger flooding my veins. "I'm not afraid of you anymore," I shouted, my voice echoing through the store. "Are you sure?" he replied, his smile widening. "The aisle is always waiting." Determined to prove my strength, I turned and faced the aisles. "You don't control me. I've faced you once, and I can do it again." The aisles trembled at my declaration, the whispers fading into silence as I embraced my past. I felt the weight of my fears lift, replaced by a sense of empowerment. With every step I took, the aisles began to shift, the oppressive atmosphere dissolving. I had confronted the darkness within me, and I wouldn't allow it to consume me again. As I stepped outside, the night air filled my lungs, and I felt free. I turned to my friends, their laughter echoing in the parking lot. I had faced my fears, and I had won. "Hey, let's do this more often," Sarah suggested, her eyes sparkling. I smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie with my friends. "Yeah, let's make it a tradition." And as we drove away from the store, I knew I had conquered the inescapable aisle. The darkness would always be a part of me, but it would never control me again. As I reflected on my experience, I realized the journey had been more than just facing fears. It had taught me the importance of confronting my past, embracing my shadows, and finding strength in unity. The inescapable aisle would always linger in the back of my mind, a reminder of what I had overcome. But I was no longer afraid. I had faced the darkness, and I had emerged stronger, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Story 7. It was just another mundane day at the Walmart on the outskirts of town, where the fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered, illuminating the endless aisles of products. My name is Lily, and I had been working the night shift as a cashier for nearly a year. Most nights, the store was quiet, with only a handful of customers trickling in to grab late-night snacks or essential items. As I scanned the shelves, my eyes occasionally drifting to the clock, I could feel the familiar mix of boredom and fatigue settling in. The hum of the store was a constant presence, accompanied by the distant sound of shopping carts rolling and the faint chatter of customers. It was a comforting routine, one I had come to accept as part of my life. That night, however, something felt different. The store was emptier than usual, and an unsettling silence hung in the air. I glanced at the other cashiers, Carmen, a bubbly woman in her 50s, and Jake, a quiet college student who often kept to himself. They seemed to notice the eerie atmosphere as well, exchanging worried glances. As the night wore on, I noticed something strange. Carmen hadn't returned from her break. I shrugged it off at first, assuming she had just lost track of time. But when Jake mentioned he hadn't seen her for over 20 minutes, an uneasy feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. Maybe she just went to the restroom, I suggested, but the words felt hollow. Yeah, but it's been too long, Jake replied, glancing toward the break room. Just as we were about to check on her, the store manager, Mr. Thompson, appeared, his brow furrowed with concern. Has anyone seen Carmen? He asked, looking around. No, I said, my heart racing. We were just about to check on her. Mr. Thompson's expression darkened. Stay here, I'll go look for her. He disappeared into the depths of the store, leaving us with a growing sense of dread. As we waited, the minutes dragged on, feeling like hours. Jake and I exchanged worried glances, the unease thickening the air around us. I tried to focus on the customers that came through my line, but my mind was elsewhere. Where could Carmen have gone? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mr. Thompson returned, his face pale. Carmen's not in the break room or the restroom, he said, his voice tight with anxiety. I'm going to check the aisles. Jake and I nodded, our hearts pounding. It was unlike Carmen to wander off, and a sense of foreboding crept in. Let's keep an eye on the registers, I suggested, trying to sound calm. We don't want to leave the customers waiting. But as the night dragged on and Carmen remained missing, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Each time the door opened, we expected to see her walk through, but it never happened. With the clock inching closer to midnight, our fears escalated. I could see the worry etched on Jake's face, his fingers tapping nervously on the counter. Mr. Thompson had gathered the remaining employees to search for Carmen, but their efforts yielded no results. We need to call the police, I suggested, my voice shaky. No, let's give it a little more time, Mr. Thompson insisted, though I could see the fear behind his eyes. She'll turn up. But as the minutes ticked by, I could feel the oppressive weight of anxiety settling in. The store was a labyrinth, and Carmen could be anywhere. Or worse, nowhere at all. Just after midnight, the store's lights flickered, casting unsettling shadows across the aisles. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life, sending a chill down my spine. Attention, employees, a distorted voice said. Please proceed to the front of the store. There's been an incident. My heart raced as I glanced at Jake, who looked equally horrified. What the hell is happening? He whispered, his voice barely audible. We should go, I said, taking a step toward the front. As we made our way through the dimly lit aisles, an unsettling feeling crept over me. The store felt different, almost alive, as if it were holding its breath in anticipation. When we reached the front, I was greeted by a horrifying sight. Mr. Thompson stood there, his face ghostly pale, and around him were the other employees, confused and panicked. But Carmen was still missing. What's going on? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. We found something in the back, Mr. Thompson replied, his voice shaky. You need to see this. As we followed him to the back of the store, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. He led us to the stockroom, where boxes were piled high, casting eerie shadows. Look, Mr. Thompson said, pointing to a small door we had never noticed before. It was slightly ajar, revealing darkness beyond. Is that? I trailed off, my voice faltering. Yes, he said, his expression grim. We found it when we were searching for Carmen. Without waiting for another word, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The rest of us exchanged nervous glances before following him into the darkness. Inside, the room was cold and musty, filled with the scent of mildew and decay. The walls were lined with old shelving units, filled with boxes that hadn't been touched in years. What is this place? Jake asked, shivering slightly. I don't know, Mr. Thompson replied, his voice barely above a whisper. But it doesn't feel right. As we explored the cramped room, the atmosphere grew heavier. I could feel the weight of something oppressive pressing down on us. My heart raced as I noticed something glinting in the dim light, a small silver badge lying on the floor. I picked it up, my hands trembling. It was Carmen's badge. Carmen, I shouted, panic surging through me. Where are you? No answer came, only the deafening silence that swallowed our cries. Thompson's face drained of color as he took the badge from me, examining it. We need to get out of here, he said, his voice shaking. But as we turned to leave, the door slammed shut behind us with a loud bang, the sound reverberating through the room. We were trapped. Panic surged through the group as we banged on the door, desperate to escape. But it didn't budge. I could hear Jake's breath quickening beside me, and I could feel the fear rising in the pit of my stomach. Suddenly, the lights flickered above us, casting eerie shadows that danced across the walls. I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye, a dark figure slipping into the shadows. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What?" Mr. Thompson said, glancing around, his eyes wide with fear. "There was something over there," I replied, pointing toward the corner of the room. But before anyone could respond, a chilling laugh echoed through the darkness, sending shivers down my spine. "What was that?" Jake exclaimed, backing away. "I don't know, but we need to get out," I yelled, pounding on the door once more. The echoes of my fists against the wood felt feeble against the overwhelming fear that engulfed us. As the laughter subsided, a voice echoed from the darkness, dripping with malice. "You shouldn't have come here," it said, sending chills racing down my spine. "Who are you?" Mr. Thompson shouted, trying to sound authoritative, but his voice trembled. "I am the keeper of this place," the voice hissed, "and you have trespassed." Suddenly the lights flickered violently, and shadows stretched across the room, wrapping around us like tendrils. I could feel the air growing colder, the darkness closing in. "We need to find a way out," I shouted, desperation flooding my voice. But as we searched the room for an escape, the shadows began to shift, moving toward us as if alive. I felt a cold breath against my neck, and terror coursed through my veins. "Lily?" Jake yelled, panic evident in his voice as he grabbed my arm. "This way." We dashed toward the far wall, desperately searching for a window or another exit, but the room felt like it was closing in around us. The laughter returned, louder this time, echoing off the walls. "Join us," the voice taunted. "Become one with the shadows." "No," I screamed, my voice rising above the chaos. "We won't give in." But as we turned to face the door, it swung open, revealing a swirling darkness that beckoned us to step inside. The shadows danced around us, whispering our names as we hesitated at the threshold. "Lily, we can't stay here," Jake urged, pulling me back. "We have to go." But the darkness called to me, promising answers to the mysteries we had stumbled upon. I could feel the pull of the unknown, a chilling allure that threatened to consume me. In that moment, I was torn between fear and curiosity. The shadows whispered secrets, enticing me with what lay beyond. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through my chest, and I gasped, stumbling back as the shadows tightened their grip on me. "Lily," Jake shouted, reaching for me. But it was too late. The shadows had claimed me, dragging me into their depths as I screamed for help. I awoke in a cold sweat, my heart racing as I realized I was alone in the room. The shadows had receded, leaving me gasping for breath. "Where's everyone?" I called out, but only silence greeted me. Panic surged through me as I rushed to the door, throwing it open. The stockroom was empty, and the lights flickered above, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Mr. Thompson?" "Jake?" I shouted, but my voice echoed back, hollow and alone. As I stepped into the main store, I froze. The aisles were dark, and the shelves stood eerily still. I wandered through the store, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel the shadows lurking in the corners, watching me, waiting for the moment I would succumb to their darkness. "Please, no," I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks as I searched for any sign of my friends. But the store remained silent, the emptiness echoing my despair. I stumbled to the front, but the registers were deserted. Just then I heard the familiar laughter, echoing from the shadows. "Welcome back, Lily," the voice said, cold and taunting. "You've come to join us." "No, I won't," I shouted, but the shadows closed in around me, suffocating my cries. As the darkness enveloped me, I felt my willpower begin to fade. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Embrace it," they urged. "You are one of us now." I fought against the shadows, but they wrapped around me, pulling me deeper into the abyss. "No, I won't let you take me," I screamed, but the words fell on deaf ears. Suddenly, I was back in the stockroom, but this time I was not alone. The faces of my missing coworkers surrounded me, their eyes hollow, their expressions vacant. "What happened to you?" I cried, desperate for answers. "They took us," Carmen whispered, her voice a mere echo. "And now they want you too." I realized with horror that I had become part of the darkness, trapped in an endless cycle of despair. The shadows laughed, their grip tightening as I struggled against the inevitable. "No, this can't be happening," I cried out, but the laughter only grew louder. As I looked around at my coworkers, I understood that we were now bound to this place, forever lost to the darkness. The store had become a prison, a haunting reminder of what we once were. The shadows wrapped around me, pulling me into their depths. I could feel my identity slipping away, consumed by the darkness that had claimed us all. "Welcome to your new home, Lily," the voice echoed as I felt myself fade into the void. "Lily," I heard Jake's voice faintly in the distance, but it grew weaker. Lost in the shadows, time lost all meaning as I drifted through the darkness, the laughter of the shadows becoming my only companion. The store continued to stand, a facade of normalcy, but I knew the truth. It was a place of horrors. Days turned into weeks, and the store remained eerily quiet. New employees came and went, unaware of the horrors lurking within the aisles. The laughter of the shadows echoed through the empty aisles, waiting for the next unsuspecting worker to wander too close to the truth. And as the cycle continued, the whispers grew louder, calling out for new souls to join them in their eternal darkness. The store became a graveyard of dreams, forever haunted by the vanishing employees who had become one with the shadows. Story 8. It was just another night at the local Walmart, a sprawling megastore that promised to serve customers day and night. I, Sarah, had taken the graveyard shift to save up for college. The air hummed with the fluorescent buzz of lights as I pushed my cart through the aisles, preparing for another long shift. "Hey, Sarah," greeted Tom, the store manager. He was a friendly guy in his mid-40s, always sporting a cap and a cheerful demeanor. "Just make sure to keep an eye on aisle 7. Some weird stuff has been going on down there." I nodded, not thinking much of it. Aisle 7 was filled with household cleaning supplies, a far cry from anything strange. But as the hours ticked by, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As I stocked shelves, the store began to quiet down. The few late-night shoppers wandered the aisles with sleepy eyes, searching for snacks or personal care items. It was just after midnight when the first odd occurrence took place. I heard a rustling noise coming from aisle 7. At first, I assumed it was a customer, but when I peeked around the corner, I saw nothing but empty shelves and shadows. My gut twisted with unease. "Just your imagination," I muttered under my breath and returned to my work. A couple of hours later, Tom had to run an errand. I volunteered to watch over aisle 7, curious about the strange noises I had heard. As the clock struck 2 a.m., I noticed that the lights flickered intermittently. "Great. Just what I need," I grumbled to myself. Just then, I caught a glimpse of a figure at the far end of the aisle, a man in a dark hoodie. He seemed to be rummaging through the shelves. "Excuse me, sir. Can I help you?" I called out. But the man didn't respond. He simply turned his head slightly, revealing nothing but darkness beneath the hood. "Sir?" I repeated, but he vanished into thin air. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Where had he gone? Panicking, I called out for Tom. "Tom, where are you?" I sprinted down the aisle, desperate to find my manager. But as I reached the front of the store, I saw that the register was empty. "Tom?" I shouted, but there was no reply. My heart raced as I rushed through the aisles, searching for him. When I returned to aisle 7, I froze. The shelves were disheveled, and cleaning supplies were scattered across the floor as if someone had been frantically searching for something. "Where are you, Tom?" I whispered, my breath quickening. Feeling more uneasy by the second, I took a deep breath and attempted to focus. The store was a maze, and I tried to remember every nook and cranny as I searched for Tom. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging the store into darkness for a brief moment. When they returned, I felt as if the atmosphere had changed. The aisles seemed to stretch endlessly, warping in ways I had never noticed before. Then I heard it, the rustling again, followed by a soft whispering. It was coming from aisle 7. My instincts screamed for me to turn back, but my curiosity won. As I cautiously stepped into aisle 7, the whispering grew louder, echoing off the shelves. "Help me, Tom," I called, my voice shaking. I felt like I was stepping into a darkened dream where reality twisted and turned. The air grew cold, and I noticed that the cleaning supplies had been pushed aside, revealing a hidden door at the back of the aisle. It was a door I had never seen before, and it creaked open slowly as if inviting me in. With no other choice, I stepped through the doorway. The small room beyond was dimly lit and filled with strange symbols carved into the walls. In the center stood a table cluttered with bizarre items, old photographs, strange trinkets, and something that looked like an old radio. As I approached the table, I felt a sudden jolt of energy coursing through the air, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. My heart raced as I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. Panicking, I banged on the door, yelling for Tom. But my voice only echoed in the small space. I could feel the shadows closing in around me, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. Then I heard it again. "Help me." "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice breaking. A shadowy figure began to materialize in the corner of the room. It was a woman, her face pale and twisted in anguish. "Help me," she begged, reaching out toward me. "They took me, took my soul." "Who took you?" I asked, horrified yet drawn to her plight. "The 24-hour aisle," she gasped, her voice fading. "It traps the souls of those who lose themselves in the shadows." I felt the walls close in, the energy of the room pulsing with malevolence. "What do I need to do?" I asked desperately. "Find the lost," she whispered, her figure flickering like a dying flame. "You must confront the darkness, or you will be lost forever." With that, she vanished, leaving me alone in the dim room. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and I stumbled back into the main aisle. But something was different. The store had transformed. The aisles twisted and turned like a never-ending maze, the lights flickering in and out. "Tom?" I yelled again, but my voice was met with silence. My heart raced as I wandered deeper into the store, desperate to find him. As I moved through the distorted aisles, I began to notice more shadows, lingering at the edges, watching me. I could hear faint whispers, a cacophony of lost souls, beckoning me deeper into their world. Suddenly, the shadows lunged at me, grabbing my arms and pulling me back. I fought against them, but they were relentless. "Let go of me," I screamed, but my cries only drew more shadows, surrounding me, suffocating me with darkness. In a moment of sheer panic, I broke free, sprinting down the aisle, trying to escape the throng of shadowy figures. I could hear their whispers intensifying, mocking me, threatening to drag me into the abyss. "Help us!" they cried. "Join us!" I stumbled back into aisle 7, my breath ragged and my heart pounding. The hidden room was still there, the doorway a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. I knew I had to confront whatever darkness awaited me inside. As I stepped back through the threshold, I felt the oppressive weight lift slightly, but the whispers persisted. "You cannot escape," they hissed. "Leave me alone," I shouted, defiance rising within me. I needed to confront the entity that controlled this place and free the souls trapped within. The shadows coalesced into a figure, a grotesque creature that shifted and shimmered, its form ever-changing. "You are brave to return," it sneered, its voice a mixture of many tones. "But bravery will not save you." "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice steady despite my fear. "To feed," it hissed, advancing toward me. "To consume the lost, to take what is rightfully mine." I felt the weight of its presence press against me, but I remembered the woman's words. Confront the darkness. I took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. "You won't take me," I shouted, my voice ringing with determination. With that, I focused on the trinkets on the table, gathering strength from the memories they held. "I won't let you consume me or anyone else." The entity recoiled, its form flickering. "You dare defy me?" "Yes," I screamed, and with that, I lunged forward, knocking over the radio on the table. The radio crackled to life, emitting a jarring sound that filled the room. The shadows recoiled, howling in rage. "No!" they cried, their voices rising in pitch. The noise intensified, a symphony of anguish and desperation that resonated within the walls. The trapped souls began to swirl around me, their whispers rising in harmony with the sound. "Free us!" they cried, their forms shimmering with renewed strength. With the shadows in disarray, I reached for the nearest trinket, a small, shimmering crystal. Holding it tightly, I focused on the darkness surrounding me. "I release you," I shouted, pouring my will into the crystal. The shadows writhed, screaming as the light from the crystal began to pierce through the darkness. "No, you will not take us," the entity screamed, its form unraveling as it fought against the power I unleashed. But I was resolute. "I won't let you keep them." With one final push, the light from the crystal exploded outward, engulfing the room in brilliance. The shadows screamed, their forms disintegrating, swirling away like smoke. The trapped souls emerged, their faces filled with gratitude and relief. "Thank you," they whispered as they vanished into the light. As the room fell silent, I collapsed to my knees, the weight of the darkness lifting from my shoulders. I had confronted the entity, and now it was gone. I awoke in the aisle, the store restored to its normal state. The fluorescent lights buzzed steadily, and the shelves stood undisturbed. "Sarah?" A familiar voice called. It was Tom, rushing toward me. "What happened? I thought I lost you." I looked up, my heart still racing. I confronted something in aisle 7. The darkness, it was consuming people. Tom's face paled. "We need to call someone. This isn't over." After reporting the incident, the store was put under investigation. They found nothing out of the ordinary, dismissing my claims as stress-induced hallucinations. But I knew the truth. The 24-hour aisle was not just an aisle. It was a gateway, a place where darkness thrived, and I couldn't shake the feeling that it was only a matter of time before it returned. Weeks passed, and life resumed its routine, but I remained vigilant. The whispers still echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of what lay beneath the surface of the store. One night, while restocking shelves, I caught a glimpse of aisle 7. The lights flickered ominously, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I knew I had to be careful. The darkness might have been driven away, but it could return, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to claim. Months later, rumors spread among employees about strange occurrences and missing stock. I tried to warn them, but no one believed me. I decided to leave the store, hoping to escape the grip of the darkness. But as I looked back one last time, I saw a flicker of movement in aisle 7. Shadows danced in the corners, and I knew that the 24-hour aisle was alive, waiting for its next victim. Story 9. I never thought a job at Walmart would turn into something out of a horror movie. When I first accepted the night shift, I was eager for the extra pay. The store was usually quiet during those hours, just me and a few late-night customers wandering through the aisles. It was a Friday night when I began my shift at 10 p.m., the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The air was cool, and the faint smell of cleaning supplies lingered as I started to restock the shelves in the grocery aisle. "Hey, Sarah," called out Jake, one of my fellow employees, as he pushed a cart of supplies down the aisle. "You ready for another boring night?" I chuckled. "You know it, just the two of us and a million cans of soup." About an hour into my shift, I was moving through the canned goods when I noticed something odd. One of the shopping carts, left unattended at the end of the aisle, was just gone. I had seen it moments before, filled with items that looked hastily thrown together: chips, soda, and a few household goods. "Hey Jake, did you take that cart?" I asked, looking around for him. But he was at the other end of the aisle, and he shook his head. "Nope, didn't touch it." "Why?" I pointed to the empty space where the cart had been. "It was right here a second ago." Jake shrugged, but a frown crossed his face. "Maybe someone took it?" "Maybe," I said, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the night wore on, I began to notice other strange occurrences. Items would vanish from shelves, only to reappear moments later in different aisles. The lights flickered more often, casting strange shadows that seemed to dart out of sight whenever I turned to look. "Did you see that?" I asked Jake as I watched a box of cereal slide off the shelf, landing perfectly upright. "See what?" he replied, still organizing the stock. "Nothing," I muttered, feeling the chill creeping up my spine. By midnight, the store was eerily quiet, with only the sound of our footsteps echoing in the empty aisles. Suddenly, I heard a whisper, soft and unintelligible, but it sent shivers down my spine. "Did you hear that?" I asked, glancing around. Jake looked up, concern etching his features. "No. What did it sound like?" "I don't know," I admitted, my heart racing. It was like a voice, but I couldn't make out the words. Jake shrugged, trying to brush it off. "Probably just the wind or something. We are in a big building, after all." As the hours ticked by, I felt the unease growing. When I went to grab another cart from the front of the store, I found that it was empty, except for a lone shopping list. The list was oddly specific, detailing items like canned beans, toilet paper, and cereal. "Hey Jake," I called out, holding up the list. "You see this?" He walked over, glancing at the paper. "Weird. Someone must have left it behind. I'll put it in the lost and found. But when Jake turned to head back to the register, I noticed something alarming. Another cart had vanished from the electronics aisle. I swear, something is going on with these carts, I said, feeling the tension build in my stomach. It's probably just customers being careless, Jake replied, though he didn't sound convinced. But I knew it was more than that. The store felt alive, pulsating with a strange energy that made the hair on my arms stand on end. Around 2 a.m., a customer finally wandered in. She was an older woman, disheveled, her eyes wide as if she had just awoken from a nightmare. "Excuse me," she said, her voice shaky. "Have you seen my cart? It was right here." I felt a cold chill run through me. It disappeared? Yes, I was just here a moment ago, and now it's gone. Jake and I exchanged glances, concern rising. "I'm sorry," I said, feeling helpless. "But we've had a couple of carts vanish tonight. It's strange." The woman looked frightened, her eyes darting around the store as if she expected something to jump out at her. "I need to find it. It had my medicine." We helped the woman search the aisles, calling out for her cart. As we reached the frozen food section, I saw it. The cart, parked eerily in front of the ice cream freezer. "Here it is," I called out, relieved. But when we approached, I froze. The cart was empty. The woman's expression shifted from hope to despair as she stared at the cart. "No, it can't be." The atmosphere shifted, growing heavier as I turned to look down the aisle. Shadows danced just out of sight, whispering incoherent phrases that sent chills down my spine. "What's happening?" the woman asked, clutching my arm. "Why does it feel like we're being watched?" "I don't know," I replied, feeling the weight of the store pressing in on us. Just as we were about to turn back, another cart appeared at the end of the aisle. It rolled silently, as if pushed by an unseen hand. "No way," Jake said, backing away. The cart came to a stop in front of us, filled to the brim with random items, snacks, cleaning supplies, and even an old television remote. "Where did this come from?" I asked, my heart racing. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness for a brief moment before they returned. When the lights came back, the cart had vanished again. The older woman gasped, looking around in disbelief. "What is going on? Where did it go?" "Let's get out of this aisle," Jake suggested, his voice shaky. "We need to call the manager." But as we turned to leave, the cart reappeared behind us, now filled with even more random items, clothes, shoes, and toys. Then we heard it. Laughter, echoing softly through the store. A cruel sound that sent shivers down my spine. The laughter seemed to come from everywhere at once, swirling around us like a storm. "Who's there?" I shouted, but the laughter only grew louder. Jake and the woman looked terrified, and I felt the panic rising in my chest. "Let's get to the front," I urged, grabbing their arms as we hurried toward the registers. As we neared the front of the store, I could feel the shadows closing in around us, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. The laughter faded into a low murmur, and the cart reappeared in front of us once again, empty. "What do you want?" I yelled at the shadows, feeling desperate. "Show yourself." The laughter returned, echoing off the walls as if mocking my plea. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a shape, a dark figure standing at the end of the aisle, its face obscured. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The figure stepped forward, revealing an unsettling smile that sent chills through me. "I'm the keeper of the carts," it said, its voice a low growl. "And you've all been invited to play." "What do you want from us?" the woman cried, backing away. "Only a little fun," it hissed, the shadows around it swirling and shifting. The store felt like it was closing in on us, the aisles twisting and bending in impossible ways. The cart rolled away again, disappearing into the darkness. "We have to get out," Jake shouted, pulling us toward the exit. But as we ran, the doors slammed shut, sealing us inside. The entity's laughter echoed in the darkness as we frantically searched for another way out. I could feel the weight of despair pressing down on me, but I refused to give in. "Look for an emergency exit," I yelled, my heart racing. We raced through the aisles, but every turn seemed to lead us deeper into the store's labyrinth. The shadows danced around us, taunting us with whispers of hopelessness. Finally, we reached the back of the store, where the emergency exit sign flickered ominously. "Please, let this be it," I whispered as I pushed against the door. It wouldn't budge. The entity's laughter grew louder, echoing through the air. "You can't escape so easily." With nowhere left to go, we turned to face the shadows. The figure loomed over us, a mass of darkness and laughter. "Let us go," I screamed, feeling a surge of desperation. But the shadows only tightened around us, whispering words of despair. Suddenly, the cart reappeared in front of me, filled with all the items we had seen before. I realized then that it was the key. "Take it," I shouted at Jake and the woman. "We need to take the cart." They hesitated, but the shadows lunged at us. With no other option, we rushed forward and grabbed the cart, holding it tightly. The entity screamed as we pulled it toward the emergency exit. The door shuddered, and light flooded into the aisle as it burst open. "Go," I yelled, shoving the cart ahead of us. We stumbled through the door, feeling the shadows dissipate behind us. Once outside, we collapsed onto the pavement, gasping for breath. "What just happened?" Jake asked, looking around in disbelief. "I don't know," I admitted, still shaking. "But we're free." As we looked back at the store, the lights flickered and the shadows slipped back into the depths. The disappearing cart had claimed its victims, but we had escaped, at least for now. Story 10. It was a typical Thursday night when I first stepped into the 24-hour Walmart, where I had taken a part-time job to help make ends meet. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a stark glow over the aisles that seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. As the clock ticked toward midnight, I prepared myself for the familiar quiet of the night shift. Just another boring shift, I thought as I clocked in. The manager, Mr. Thompson, gave me a nod as I made my way toward the checkout lanes. "Don't forget to keep an eye on the registers. We've had some strange things happening lately," he warned, his voice low and serious. "What kind of strange?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He shrugged, dismissing my curiosity with a wave of his hand. "Nothing you need to worry about. Just keep alert." My shift started out slowly, with only a handful of customers trickling in for late-night snacks and essentials. The aisles were eerily quiet. The only sounds, the rustling of plastic bags and the soft hum of the cooling units. Around 1 a.m., I was stationed at the checkout when I noticed a woman standing at the self-checkout area, her cart filled with groceries. She was fidgeting nervously, glancing over her shoulder as if she were being watched. "Hey, do you need any help?" I called out, trying to ease her anxiety. She looked at me, her eyes wide. Yes. I can't get this machine to work." I walked over to assist her, and as I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The store was unusually still, and the flickering lights above us made the shadows dance along the floor. After helping the woman with her self-checkout, I returned to my station. Just as I sat down, I noticed something strange. One of the checkout lanes, usually reserved for customers, had a faint glow emanating from it, as if someone were standing there. I rubbed my eyes, thinking it was just my imagination. But when I looked again, the light was still there, pulsing softly. I leaned closer, trying to get a better view, but the checkout lane appeared completely empty. "Just the lights playing tricks on me," I muttered, shaking my head. Around 2 a.m., I was restocking candy at the front when I heard a faint voice calling out from the mysterious checkout lane. "Hello? Is anyone there?" I froze, my heart racing. The voice sounded distant and hollow, echoing through the store. I glanced around, but the aisle was deserted. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. No response. I felt a chill run down my spine as I glanced back at the checkout lane. The glow had intensified, and the air around me seemed to thicken with an unexplainable energy. When the next customer approached, I was relieved to have something to focus on. A tall man in a hoodie stepped up to my register, his face obscured by the shadow of his hood. "Just these, please," he said, his voice low and muffled. I scanned his items, snacks, a soda, and a pack of batteries. As I finished ringing him up, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He paid quickly, not making eye contact. As he grabbed his bags, I noticed something odd. The total didn't seem to match the prices of the items I had scanned. It came out to an unusually high amount. I think there's a mistake," I said, frowning as I glanced at the screen. The man turned abruptly, his eyes dark and empty. "No mistake. Just let it go." He walked away without looking back, disappearing into the aisles. After the man left, I felt unsettled. I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were creeping closer, wrapping around me like a thick fog. Moments later, I heard the faint whisper again. "Help me. Help me." The voice seemed to float through the air, ethereal and pleading. I looked around, but the store remained silent. Determined to confront whatever was happening, I made my way to the mysterious checkout lane. As I approached the checkout lane, the glow intensified and the whispering grew louder. "Help me, please." I hesitated, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. In response, a figure materialized before me, a woman, her face pale and ghostly, staring directly at me with hollow eyes. "You have to help me," she pleaded, her voice echoing through the store. "What do you want?" I asked, stepping back instinctively. "I'm trapped here," she said, her voice cracking. "I need you to find my cart." "Your cart?" I asked, confusion swirling in my mind. "What do you mean?" "I lost it in the store. Please, it's the only way I can move on," she said, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. I felt a surge of empathy for her plight. "Okay, I'll help you. Where did you last see it?" She pointed toward the back of the store, her hand trembling. "It was in the aisle with the seasonal items. But be careful, it's not just a cart." With the woman's words echoing in my mind, I ventured toward the back of the store. The air grew colder, and the lights flickered more frequently. The aisle was dark, lined with seasonal decorations that seemed to watch me as I passed. As I neared the end, I saw it. The cart, abandoned and filled with an assortment of items that seemed out of place. Toys, a winter coat, and a can of soup. But as I approached, I felt an overwhelming dread wash over me. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the aisle, extinguishing the overhead lights. I was plunged into darkness, the only sound my frantic breathing. "Get away from it," the woman's voice echoed in my mind. I turned to run, but the shadows closed in around me, whispering words I couldn't understand. I stumbled backward, feeling the cart's handle brush against my hand. With one swift motion, I grabbed the cart and pulled it away from the shelves. The shadows recoiled, and I heard laughter, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed through the aisles. "You think you can escape?" Panic surged through me as I sprinted back toward the front of the store, the cart clattering behind me. The woman's ghostly form appeared before me, her eyes wide with fear. "Quick! Take it back," she urged, her voice rising above the laughter. I pushed the cart toward the checkout lane, the glowing light illuminating the darkness. "This is where you belong," I shouted, my heart racing. The shadows writhed, swirling around the checkout lane as I placed the cart down. "No, you can't do this." But as I stepped back, the ghostly woman smiled, her face radiating relief. "Thank you. Now I can finally be free." The shadows began to dissipate, retreating into the corners of the store. The laughter faded into silence, and the oppressive air lifted. As the lights returned to normal, I fell to my knees, breathing heavily. The woman's figure faded into the light, a look of gratitude on her face. "You did it," she whispered, her voice now a gentle breeze. What just happened?" I gasped, trying to process the surreal experience. The ghostly figure vanished, leaving me alone in the aisle, the cart standing silent beside me. I could feel a weight lifting off my shoulders, but questions lingered. The rest of my shift passed in a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease, but I felt a strange sense of accomplishment. I had helped a lost soul find her way. When my shift ended, I clocked out, looking back at the store. It seemed just like any other Walmart, but I knew better. The phantom checkout line had existed, and I had faced the darkness within. Days turned into weeks, and I tried to forget the events of that night. But I often found myself glancing toward the checkout lanes, half expecting to see the woman's ghostly figure again. Then, one night, I received a call from Mr. Thompson. "We need you to cover the late shift tonight. We've had some reports of weird occurrences at the store." My heart raced. "What kind of occurrences?" He hesitated before answering. "Customers have mentioned seeing a woman wandering the aisles, asking for her cart." The next night, I stood at the front of the store, my heart pounding. I had a decision to make: face the unknown again, or turn my back on what I had experienced. Taking a deep breath, I chose to confront my fears. As the clock struck midnight, I steeled myself for whatever awaited me in the aisles of shadows. I made my way to the checkout lane, the familiar glow beckoning me once again. This time, I felt more prepared. I had faced the darkness before, and I could do it again. "Where are you?" I called out, hoping for an answer. The air grew still, and the shadows coalesced around me. "Help me." I gritted my teeth. "I'm here. I'll help you." As I turned toward the back of the store, I felt the familiar pull of the shadows, but this time I wasn't afraid. I pushed forward, determined to find the cart and help the lost souls trapped within. When I reached the aisle, I saw it. The cart, waiting for me with an air of expectation. I gripped the handle and felt a surge of energy coursing through me. "Enough!" I shouted at the shadows swirling around me. "I won't let you take anyone else." The shadows writhed in response, but I stood my ground, gripping the cart tightly. "You can't have me." The shadows lunged, but I raised the cart as a shield. The moment it made contact, a blinding light erupted, illuminating the darkness. As the light faded, I found myself standing alone in the aisle. The woman's spirit appeared beside me, radiant and free. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of warmth. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace wash over me. "You're free now." After that night, things began to change at the store. The atmosphere felt lighter, and the whispers faded into silence. Though I continued to work the night shift, I never saw the shadows again. The phantom checkout line had disappeared, but I knew that I had faced my fears and helped others in the process. As I walked through the aisles, I felt a sense of calm, knowing that I had made a difference. The store was just a store now. No more phantoms, no more shadows, just the gentle hum of the fluorescent lights and the promise of a new beginning. Story 11. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I stepped into the local Walmart, illuminating the wide aisles filled with everyday essentials and oddities. I had just graduated college, armed with a degree in business management, but lacking any real-world experience. My heart raced with excitement and anxiety as I pushed through the sliding glass doors. The familiar scent of cleaning supplies and the hum of the store enveloped me, bringing a sense of comfort even in this corporate labyrinth. After months of fruitless job hunting, I had finally landed this part-time position. The store manager, Lisa, was quick to greet me. She had an air of authority, but also a friendly demeanor that put me somewhat at ease. "Welcome aboard, Ryan. We're glad to have you," she said, shaking my hand. Her grip was firm, and her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "Thanks for hiring me," I replied, eager to make a good impression. I could already picture myself working hard, gaining experience, and eventually moving on to something bigger. Lisa led me through the store, explaining the layout and my responsibilities. "Your main responsibility will be in the stockroom," she said, gesturing to a large, heavy door at the back. "It can get a little chaotic back there, especially on weekends, but just stay organized and ask for help if you need it." "Got it," I said, trying to keep my nerves in check. As we approached the stockroom, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the place. It loomed large and ominous, almost like a portal to another world. "Whatever you do, don't go through that door," Lisa said, catching my gaze. "It leads to a storage area we don't use anymore. It's not safe." "Not safe?" I echoed, curiosity piqued. "Just trust me on this one," she replied, her tone serious. I nodded, though her words only fueled my curiosity. What could possibly be so dangerous about a stockroom? My first week passed in a blur of activity. I quickly learned the layout of the store, how to restock shelves, and the various products we carried. The camaraderie among employees made the shifts bearable, but no matter how busy I was, my thoughts kept drifting back to the forbidden stockroom door. As the sun dipped below the horizon one night, I found myself alone in the store, preparing for the closing shift. The bright lights created an artificial daytime, but I could feel the atmosphere shift. There was a stillness in the air that made my skin crawl. "Hello?" I called out, but only the hum of the refrigeration units responded. I shivered, glancing toward the stockroom. Then I heard it, a soft thud, barely noticeable over the ambient noise. I paused, looking around the dimly lit stockroom. "Is anyone there?" I called again, my voice echoing off the concrete walls. No answer. "Just my imagination," I muttered, trying to convince myself. But the thudding continued, a rhythmic sound that seemed to call to me. Against my better judgment, I decided to investigate. With a cautious glance over my shoulder, I approached the door. It loomed before me, its presence both terrifying and intriguing. "Just a quick look," I told myself, pushing the door open slightly. The hinges creaked, and a chill swept over me as I stepped into the darkened space beyond. Inside, the room was filled with dust-covered boxes stacked haphazardly. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. A single flickering light bulb cast eerie shadows against the walls. As I ventured deeper into the room, I noticed a strange silence settling around me. It felt as if time itself had stopped. My heart raced as I called out again. "Is anyone there?" "Help me." The voice was faint, barely a whisper, but it sent a chill down my spine. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Please, help me." The voice was clearer now, a haunting melody that wrapped around my mind, drawing me further into the darkness. I moved toward the source of the voice, my curiosity overriding my sense of caution. As I turned a corner, I saw her, a woman standing in the shadows, her face obscured by darkness. "Who are you?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Please," she whispered. "You have to help me get out of here." "Get out of where?" I asked, confused. "I'm trapped," she said, her voice filled with despair. "You have to find the key." "The key? What key?" I asked, looking around the room. "It's hidden in the boxes," she urged. "You must hurry." The urgency in her voice sparked something in me. I began to search the boxes, moving them aside, my hands shaking as I rifled through the contents. "Faster," she urged, her voice echoing through the dimly lit room. With every box I opened, I felt the atmosphere growing heavier. Dust floated through the air, and the faint whispers of other lost souls echoed around me. "Help us," they cried. I gritted my teeth and continued searching, fueled by the desperation in her voice. "Where is it?" I muttered to myself, growing increasingly frantic. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I spotted a small, rusted key nestled among a pile of old tools. "Is this it?" I called out, holding it aloft. "Yes, that's it," she exclaimed, her voice filled with urgency. With the key in hand, I rushed toward the stockroom door. My heart raced as I inserted the key into the lock, but doubt crept in. "What if this is a mistake?" I thought. "Please, you have to let me out," she pleaded, her eyes wide with desperation. I turned the key and pushed the door open. Light flooded the room as she stepped forward, her figure becoming clearer. "Thank you," she said, relief flooding her voice. But as I looked into her eyes, I felt a wave of dread wash over me. Something was off. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too vacant. Suddenly, the shadows around us began to swirl, thickening as darkness enveloped me. "Wait, what's happening?" I shouted, panic setting in. "No, you're not supposed to be here," she cried, her voice changing to something more sinister. In an instant, the world around me shifted. I found myself surrounded by darkness, the woman disappearing into the void. The air grew heavy, and I realized I was no longer in control. The shadows writhed around me, and I could hear the cries of lost souls, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of despair. "Help us," they wailed, each one echoing my own fear. I stumbled backward, trying to find my way out, but every direction felt wrong. I was trapped in a labyrinth of darkness, the walls closing in around me. Days turned into nights as I wandered through the shadows. I lost track of time, unable to escape the oppressive gloom that surrounded me. Each turn I took led me deeper into despair. Then I stumbled upon a group of lost souls, their faces familiar, yet twisted in sorrow. "You're one of us now," one whispered, his voice hollow. "Welcome to the stockroom." I realized with horror that I had become the very thing I had feared. I was now a keeper of the darkness, destined to trap others in this endless cycle. As the days stretched into weeks, I learned more about the souls trapped within this dark realm. They told me stories of their lives before they became lost, and I listened, a captive audience to their tales of regret and sorrow. "I was just looking for a new job," one woman lamented, her voice tinged with bitterness. "Now I'm stuck here, forever." "Why did we listen to her?" a man cried, shaking his head. "She deceived us all." Their pain resonated with me, filling me with a deep sense of guilt. I had been complicit in their entrapment. I was one of them now. One day, as I wandered the endless aisles of shadows, I heard the voice again, the same woman from before. "You can still help us," she whispered, her tone now softer. "How?" I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. "You have the power to guide others who come here," she explained. "You can help them find their way back." "But how can I do that when I'm trapped too?" I cried. "There's a way," she insisted. "You just have to believe." With her words echoing in my mind, I began to search for the key again. determined to unlock the door that had sealed my fate. Each box I opened felt like a step closer to the truth. As I sifted through the contents, I found remnants of lives once lived. Photographs, letters, and personal belongings. They all told stories of dreams unfulfilled and hopes dashed. I picked up a worn-out photo of a family, their smiles frozen in time. "What happened to you?" I whispered, my heart heavy with empathy. "Trapped like us," a voice answered from the shadows. I turned, startled. It was another soul, his face lined with sorrow. "You must remember them," he said. "They are what keep us connected to the world outside." "I can't forget," I replied, feeling a surge of determination. "I will help you all." As time passed, I embraced my role as the keeper of the stockroom, guiding lost souls who wandered in. I became their confidant, helping them confront their fears and regrets. But each time I assisted someone, I felt a piece of myself slip away. I was losing my identity, my connection to the outside world. One night, a new soul appeared. A man with wild eyes and a frantic demeanor. "You have to help me," he shouted, panic seeping into his voice. "Calm down, what happened?" I asked, trying to soothe him. "I was just shopping. I didn't mean to end up here," he cried. "Please, I want to go home." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. "You need to confront your fears," I said, trying to sound confident. "It's the only way to escape." He nodded, desperation etched on his face. As I guided him through the labyrinth of darkness, I felt the weight of my own fears pressing down on me. We stopped before a series of boxes, their contents spilling onto the floor. "Remember what you've lost," I urged him. "Face it." He hesitated, staring into the darkness. "I don't want to remember," he whispered, but I pushed him forward. "You have to, it's the only way." With a trembling hand, he reached for a box and opened it. Inside were remnants of his life, a child's drawing, a toy, and a photo. "I left them behind," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't think." "It's okay," I soothed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You can still make it right." As he faced his past, the shadows began to recede, revealing a flicker of light in the distance. "I can see it," he shouted, hope flooding his voice. "Yes, keep going," I encouraged him, feeling a surge of energy as he stepped closer to the light. But just as he reached out, darkness surged forward, trying to pull him back. "No," I shouted, pushing against the shadows. "You can do this." With a final burst of determination, he broke free, his form becoming more transparent as he stepped into the light. "Thank you," he shouted, his voice filled with joy as he vanished. I felt a strange emptiness wash over me. "What now?" I whispered to myself, realizing that my own fate remained uncertain. As the days turned into weeks, I encountered more souls, each with their own stories and struggles. I guided them through the darkness, helping them confront their fears. But with every soul I freed, I felt my own essence fading. I was becoming a vessel for their despair, my identity slipping away like sand through my fingers. One night, as I sat alone in the dark, the woman's voice returned. "You can't keep this up forever," she warned, her tone serious. "I have to help them," I replied, frustration bubbling to the surface. "You're losing yourself in the process," she cautioned. "You must find a way to save yourself." "What do you suggest?" I snapped, anger seeping into my voice. "Seek the source of the darkness," she said, her voice growing distant. "Only then can you break free." Determined to uncover the source of the darkness, I began my search. I navigated through the aisles, feeling the oppressive weight of despair surrounding me. After what felt like an eternity, I stumbled upon a large box at the center of the stockroom. It was covered in dust, untouched by time. "What's in here?" I whispered, feeling a strange energy radiating from the box. As I reached out to open it, the shadows grew thicker, swirling around me like a living entity. I hesitated, fear clawing at my mind, but I knew I had to face this. With trembling hands, I opened the box. Inside was a collection of forgotten memories, items that belonged to the lost souls trapped within the darkness. I recognized some of the photographs and mementos from previous encounters. "What is this?" I asked, my heart racing. "It's their pain," a voice echoed from the shadows. I spun around, my eyes wide with fear. "Who are you?" "I am the keeper of these souls," the voice replied, deep and resonant. "You have wandered too far. What do you want from me?" I demanded, my heart pounding in my chest. "To join us," the voice said, a sinister undertone creeping in. "You are already one of us." "No," I shouted, backing away. The darkness swirled around me, the whispers growing louder as lost souls reached out for me. "Join us," they cried, their voices filled with longing. "Enough," I yelled, fighting against the tide of shadows. "I won't become like you." With every ounce of strength I pushed against the darkness, determined to break free. "You cannot escape," the voice thundered, the shadows closing in. "You are bound to this place." But I refused to give in. Drawing on the strength of the souls I had helped, I focused on the light I had seen before. "Remember your light," I shouted, the words echoing in the darkness. As I embraced the light within me, it surged forward, illuminating the stockroom and pushing back the shadows. "You will not take me," I roared, determination flooding my veins. The darkness shrieked in response, a cacophony of anguish and fury. But I pressed on, the light growing brighter with every step. "Let the lost find their way," I declared, channeling all my strength into the light. With a final burst of energy, the light erupted, flooding the stockroom and engulfing the darkness. The shadows shrieked, retreating in terror as I felt myself being lifted. When the light faded, I found myself back in the store, gasping for breath. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the familiar scent of cleaning supplies filled my nostrils. "What just happened?" I murmured, glancing around. The store was quiet, and the oppressive weight of the stockroom door was gone. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but I also felt the echoes of the lost souls linger in my mind. As I resumed my duties, I felt a newfound sense of purpose. The experience had changed me, igniting a fire within. I vowed to help others navigate the darkness, ensuring no one else would fall victim to the stockroom door. I shared my story with my coworkers, warning them of the dangers lurking within the store. "You have to stay vigilant," I told them. "Don't let curiosity lead you astray." Over time, I built a support network, creating a safe space for employees to share their experiences and fears. Months passed, and the store transformed. The atmosphere lightened, and the whispers of the lost souls faded into silence. I felt their presence still, but it was a gentle reminder of my purpose. I had become the guardian of their memories, ensuring they were never forgotten. Every soul I helped guided me further down the path of light. One night, as I closed up the store, I took a moment to reflect on everything that had transpired. "Thank you for trusting me," I whispered, feeling the warmth of their spirits surrounding me. Though I had faced darkness, I had emerged stronger. The stockroom door no longer loomed ominously in my mind. It was a reminder of the power of choice and the importance of guiding others. I walked through the aisles, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. My experiences had taught me valuable lessons, and I was determined to carry them forward. Years later, I still worked at the store, now a leader among my peers. I shared my story with new employees, hoping to inspire them to face their own fears. As I looked around, I saw a vibrant community of workers who supported one another. We had transformed the store into a place of light, where the echoes of lost souls no longer lingered. "Let's honor those who came before us," I said during a staff meeting. "Together, we can ensure no one else falls into darkness." The room erupted in applause, and I felt a swell of pride. I had become the guardian of the stockroom, a beacon of hope in the face of despair. As the years rolled on, I continued to guide others through the shadows, ensuring they found their way back to the light. I had built a legacy of hope, and I would carry it forward as long as I could. And as long as the stockroom door remained closed, I knew that I had fulfilled my purpose. As I glanced at the stockroom door one last time, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The whispers of lost souls echoed in my heart, a reminder of the journey I had taken. "Thank you," I whispered, knowing they would always be a part of me. With a final smile, I turned away from the stockroom, ready to embrace whatever came next. Story 12. It was a drizzly Tuesday evening when I made my way to the local Walmart, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. The store was oddly quiet for the time of day. A chill ran down my spine as I entered, the air thick with an unsettling stillness. I'd decided to return a few items that I had purchased over the weekend. A pair of shoes that were 2 sizes too small, and a kitchen gadget I didn't need. As I wandered toward the returns desk, I noticed the aisles were eerily deserted. The usual hum of chatter and clattering carts was replaced by the sound of my footsteps echoing through the cavernous space. I brushed it off as a typical weekday lull, but a nagging feeling stirred within me. Arriving at the returns desk, I was greeted by a cashier named Linda, a woman with weary eyes and an indifferent expression. She scanned the shoes first, her movements robotic and mechanical. "Do you have your receipt?" she asked, her voice monotone. I reached into my bag, feeling around for the crumpled paper. I thought I did. "Ah, here it is." I handed it to her, but as she examined it, her brow furrowed. "This doesn't look right," she murmured. "You sure this is from here?" I blinked, feeling my stomach drop. "What do you mean? I bought these shoes here." Linda scrutinized the receipt further, tapping her finger on the counter. "It says you bought them in a different state and 3 months ago." "That can't be right," I replied, incredulity washing over me. "I bought them here just a few days ago." She shrugged, looking unconcerned. "Well, this receipt doesn't match. I can't process the return without a valid receipt." Frustration bubbled up inside me. "I assure you, I bought them here. This is the receipt from the transaction." Linda's expression softened slightly, but she shook her head. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you. You might want to check with the customer service desk." I took the receipt back, glancing at it again. The details looked fine to me, but something felt off. I trudged over to the customer service desk, where a different cashier, a young man named Derek, greeted me with a bright smile that felt forced. "What can I help you with today?" "I need to return these shoes, but the cashier said my receipt is invalid," I explained, handing him the receipt again. Derek glanced at it, and his smile faded. This is strange." He peered at the receipt, his brow knitting together in confusion. "It's dated for 3 months ago, and from the next state over. How did you end up with this?" "I don't know. I bought them here," I said, my voice rising in exasperation. "Let me see if I can track down the original transaction," Derek said, typing furiously on the computer behind the desk. As he worked, I felt a creeping unease wash over me. Something was clearly wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I glanced around the store, watching as a few customers ambled by, their faces devoid of any emotion. They moved in a slow, deliberate manner, like puppets on strings. I'm not finding anything on this transaction," Derek said after a moment, looking perplexed. "It's like it doesn't exist in our system." "What do you mean it doesn't exist?" I asked, the dread pooling in my gut. "I have the receipt right here." "Let me try calling someone," he said, fumbling with the phone. As he dialed, I noticed a commotion at the front of the store. A few customers were gathered around a display, murmuring in low tones. "What's going on?" I asked, straining to hear. "Something about a missing person," Derek replied. Still focused on the phone, I felt my heart race. The atmosphere in the store felt thicker, like the air had turned to molasses. After what felt like an eternity, Derek hung up the phone, his expression unreadable. "Okay, I need you to come with me," he said, gesturing toward the back of the store. "Where are we going?" I asked, bewildered. "To the manager's office. I think you need to explain the situation to him," Derek said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. I followed him through the aisles, the fluorescent lights casting eerie shadows on the floor. The murmurs from the customers faded as we approached the office. Derek knocked on the door, and a voice called out, "Come in." Inside, the manager, a stern-looking man with thinning hair, sat behind a desk cluttered with papers. He looked up, annoyance flickering across his face. "What is it, Derek?" "This customer has a receipt that's showing a transaction from 3 months ago, but she claims she bought the items today," he explained. The manager raised an eyebrow. His interest piqued. "What's your name?" "Sarah," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let me see the receipt," he said. I handed it to him, and he scrutinized it with a furrowed brow. "This is from a Walmart in Ohio," he muttered, shaking his head. "That's not possible. You were here yesterday?" "Yes, I bought these shoes yesterday," I insisted, growing more agitated. The manager exchanged a glance with Derek, then sighed. "Look, Sarah, I don't know what to tell you. This receipt is invalid, and I can't process any returns without proper documentation. Do you have any idea what could have happened?" I pressed, desperation creeping into my voice. He leaned back in his chair, contemplating. "We've had some strange occurrences lately. Missing persons, odd reports from customers. I wouldn't be surprised if it's related." What do you mean? I asked, feeling my pulse quicken. The store has been acting strange, he said slowly. People have reported things disappearing or reappearing out of nowhere. It's almost like, I don't know, time glitches or something. My heart raced. What do you mean, time glitches? It's hard to explain, he said. We're looking into it, but if you didn't purchase those shoes here, I can't help you. As I left the manager's office, my mind was racing. A part of me wanted to brush it off as nonsense, but deep down, I could feel a gnawing dread that something was off. Derek followed me, concern etched on his face. Are you okay? This must be really frustrating for you. I just don't understand, I said, shaking my head. How can I have a receipt for something I bought here? I'll help you figure it out, Derek said, his tone earnest. Let's retrace your steps. We wandered back to the shoe aisle where I'd originally purchased the shoes. I scanned the area, hoping to jog my memory. I was right here, I said, pointing. I picked them up off this shelf. Derek nodded, peering closely at the shoes. Let's see if we can find a similar pair. We searched the aisle, but the shoes I remembered were nowhere to be found. Instead, there were different brands and styles, all seemingly new. I frowned, frustration rising once again. Maybe they moved them, Derek suggested, glancing around. I don't think so, I replied. I'm sure they were right here. Suddenly, a commotion erupted near the front of the store. The same customers who had been gathered earlier were now shouting, panic rising in their voices. What is going on? I muttered, feeling my stomach twist in knots. Derek and I hurried to the front, where a group of customers was gathered around a display. They're saying a little girl went missing, a woman in the crowd said, her voice trembling. They can't find her anywhere. What do you mean, missing? I asked, pushing through the crowd. She was just here. I saw her, another woman exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear. Is this a joke? I muttered to myself. What is happening in this place? The manager arrived at the front of the store, trying to calm the crowd. Everyone, please remain calm. We're doing everything we can to locate the child. I felt a chill run down my spine as I listened. Derek, we need to do something, I said urgently. Let's check the security footage, he suggested, his brow furrowing in determination. We raced back to the manager's office, where a monitor displayed the footage from the security cameras. The grainy video showed a busy aisle with customers moving about. There she is. Derek pointed at the screen. A little girl, no older than 7, was seen wandering away from her mother, her bright pink backpack bouncing with every step. I leaned closer, my heart racing. What happened next? The video continued, showing the girl moving toward the toy aisle, and then she vanished. The footage glitched for a split second, and when it resumed, she was gone. Where did she go? I whispered, feeling panic bubble inside me. Derek frowned, rewinding the footage to the moment she disappeared. I don't know, he said. It doesn't make sense. Are there any other missing persons reported? I asked, feeling a sense of urgency wash over me. Let me check, he replied, typing furiously on the computer. I'll see if there are any connections. While he worked, I glanced at the receipt in my hand again. The numbers and letters seemed to blur together, almost as if they were alive. What if it's all connected? I murmured, a thought creeping into my mind. The missing girl, the receipt, everything. Derek turned to me, his expression serious. What do you mean? I think there's something going on in this store. Something supernatural, I said, feeling a chill run through me. He shook his head, skepticism written all over his face. Come on, Sarah. That's a bit far-fetched, don't you think? Is it? I shot back. We're standing here watching a girl vanish from the security footage and a receipt that shouldn't exist. What else can explain it? I don't know, he admitted, his voice uncertain. Determined to find answers, I suggested we investigate the store further. We walked the aisles, looking for anything out of place. As we made our way to the back of the store, I noticed a door labeled, "Employees Only." It was slightly ajar, and I could hear muffled voices coming from inside. Should we go in? Derek asked hesitantly. Let's see what they're talking about, I replied, my curiosity getting the better of me. We pushed the door open slowly, stepping inside. The room was dimly lit, filled with shelves stocked with various supplies. A group of employees huddled together, whispering in hushed tones. As we entered, they fell silent, their eyes darting toward us. Can we help you? One of them asked. crossing his arms defensively. "We're trying to figure out what's going on with the missing girl," I said, my voice steady. The employees exchanged glances, and one of them, a woman with dark hair, spoke up. "You shouldn't be in here. This is a private area." "But we need to know," I pressed. "There's something strange happening in the store." The woman hesitated before nodding. "You're right. There's been a lot of weird stuff lately. Missing items, strange noises, and now this." "Do you think it's connected?" Derek asked, glancing between the employees. "Yes," the woman replied, her voice low. "We've been hearing reports of people disappearing, and it's like the store itself is shifting." "What do you mean?" I asked, intrigued. "Like the layout changes and items appear or vanish without explanation," she explained. "It's as if time doesn't work the same way here." As we delved deeper into the employees' concerns, the atmosphere grew heavier, as if the air itself was charged with tension. They recounted strange experiences. Items they'd just stocked mysteriously returning to the shelves, customers reporting déjà vu, and others who claimed to have been in the store for hours but were unaware of the time passing. "It's all connected," I said, a sudden realization dawning on me. The receipt, the missing girl, and the strange happenings. It's like there's a rift in reality right here in this store. "Exactly," the woman replied. "We're trying to keep things under control, but it feels like it's spiraling out of our hands." Derek looked worried. "What can we do? Is there a way to fix it?" The employees exchanged glances. Then the dark-haired woman said, "We need to find the source. There's an old stockroom that hasn't been used in years. It's at the back of the store, behind the toy aisle. We think it might be where everything is originating from." "Let's go," I said, adrenaline surging through me. "We have to check it out." Navigating through the aisles, we finally reached the entrance to the old stockroom. The door was weathered, the paint peeling away, revealing wood that was warped and aged. "This is it," Derek said, his voice barely above a whisper. I pushed the door open, and it creaked ominously. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and shadows. Dim light flickered from a single bulb hanging overhead. "What now?" Derek asked, glancing around nervously. "We search," I replied, my voice steady. As we moved further inside, I felt an unsettling presence. The shadows seemed to stretch and pull, flickering at the edges of my vision. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the room, and I jumped, heart racing. "What was that?" I exclaimed, spinning around. Derek moved closer to me, eyes wide. "I don't know. Let's check it out." We cautiously approached a pile of boxes that had toppled over, revealing a small door tucked away in the corner. "What's this?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. Derek crouched down, peering through the gap. "I think it leads to another part of the store," he said, glancing back at me. "Should we go in?" "Yes," I replied, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. We squeezed through the door, emerging into a dimly lit corridor that felt otherworldly. The walls were lined with shelves filled with items that seemed out of place, forgotten remnants of the store's past. "Look at this," I said, picking up an old toy. "These are items that should have been discarded ages ago." "What does it mean?" Derek asked, glancing around uneasily. "It's like a time capsule," I murmured. "Maybe this is where the missing things are ending up." Suddenly, the corridor began to shake, the walls vibrating as if responding to an unseen force. "Run!" Derek shouted, and we dashed back toward the door we'd entered. As we escaped the corridor, the air felt electric. The very fabric of the store seemed to shift around us. The aisles morphed and twisted, creating a labyrinth that felt impossible to navigate. "Where are we?" I gasped, looking around in confusion. "I don't know," Derek shouted, his voice panicked. "We need to get back to the front." We sprinted through the disorienting aisles, but each turn seemed to lead us further away from our goal. The customers who had been in the store now appeared as shadowy figures, their faces obscured, drifting along without purpose. "What's happening?" I exclaimed, glancing over my shoulder. "It's like they're stuck in time," Derek said, fear etched on his face. We stumbled upon an aisle filled with mannequins, their lifeless forms standing eerily still. I shivered as I passed them, the feeling of being watched prickling at the back of my neck. "We need to find a way out," I said urgently. "Maybe the exit is just ahead," Derek suggested, and we ran toward a flickering sign that read "Exit" in bright red letters. But as we approached, the sign flickered, casting a haunting glow that made the shadows around us dance. "It's not working," I cried out, panic rising within me. Just as we reached the exit, the door slammed shut, trapping us inside. The lights flickered violently, plunging us into darkness for a brief moment before illuminating a scene of chaos. The aisles were no longer just aisles. They morphed into dark voids, stretching infinitely in every direction. The whispers of lost souls filled the air, echoing through the store, each voice a reminder of those who had vanished. "What is happening?" Derek shouted, his voice wavering. "I think we've crossed over," I said, feeling the weight of dread settle heavily on my shoulders. "This place is a vortex, a nexus of time and space." "Then we need to find the center," he said resolutely. "There has to be a way to close it." "Where do we even start?" I asked, feeling hopeless. "We retrace our steps," Derek suggested. "If we can find where the little girl disappeared, maybe we can reverse whatever has happened." Nodding, we turned back, navigating the shifting aisles that twisted and turned, each step taking us deeper into the heart of the store's enigma. We finally reached the toy aisle, the place where the girl had vanished. I stared down the long stretch of shelves, fear tightening around my chest. "This is where it all began," I murmured. Derek nodded, his jaw set with determination. "If we can find something, anything, maybe we can bring her back." As we searched the aisle, I noticed a flicker of movement from the corner of my eye. "Did you see that?" I asked, pointing toward the end of the aisle. Derek squinted, and we cautiously approached the spot where the movement had occurred. Suddenly, a soft giggle echoed through the air, and a small figure darted behind a shelf. "Hey," I called, chasing after it. "Are you okay?" The figure paused, revealing the little girl from the security footage, her bright pink backpack still on her back. "Help me," she cried, her voice trembling. "What happened to you?" I asked, kneeling down to her level. "I don't know. I was looking at the toys, and then everything got dark, and I couldn't find my mom," she whimpered. "Don't worry, we're going to get you out of here," I assured her, glancing at Derek. "But we need to hurry," Derek said, looking around nervously. "This place is shifting again." I took the girl's hand, leading her back toward the aisle's exit. "We need to stick together. We can find your mom." As we retraced our steps, the aisles morphed around us, closing in like a maze. The whispers grew louder, almost drowning out my thoughts. "Where are you taking me?" the girl asked, her eyes wide with fear. "Back to the front. You'll be safe there." I reassured her, but doubt gnawed at my mind. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness for a fleeting moment. "We can't stop," Derek shouted, urging us forward. We sprinted through the aisles, the shadows closing in around us. The sensation of being watched intensified, and I could feel a presence lurking just beyond our sight. "Don't look back," I yelled, focusing on the path ahead. As we rounded a corner, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The ground shook beneath us, and a low rumble filled the air. "Quick, this way." Derek pointed toward a narrow passageway that led toward the front of the store. We squeezed through, adrenaline pumping through our veins. I could hear the distant echoes of laughter, sorrowful cries, and the unsettling sound of rustling packaging. "Almost there," I called out, pushing myself to keep moving, the girl's small hand gripping mine tightly. Finally, we emerged into a wider area near the front of the store. The flickering lights illuminated the path ahead, but a heavy, suffocating presence loomed over us. "We're not safe yet," Derek warned, looking around anxiously. Before we could catch our breath, a chilling wind swept through the area, causing the lights to flicker violently. "What's happening?" the girl whimpered, clutching my hand tightly. "Just stay close," I shouted, my heart racing. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced, forming dark figures that swirled around us, their whispers rising to a cacophony. I felt the grip of fear wrap around me, the weight of countless souls lost in this space. "We need to confront it," Derek said, his voice fierce. "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling the panic rise within me. "We have to call it out. It feeds on fear and despair. If we confront it with courage, we might be able to weaken it." Taking a deep breath, I nodded. "Together, then. We have to show it we're not afraid." Derek and I stood shoulder to shoulder, facing the swirling shadows. "You don't control us," I shouted, my voice trembling but defiant. "We're leaving this place." The shadows writhed in response, the whispers escalating into a deafening roar. "You can't take us. We won't let you." Derek shouted, his voice breaking through the chaos. In that moment of unity, a blinding light erupted around us, pushing back against the darkness. The shadows shrieked in rage, their forms dissipating as the light grew brighter. The ground trembled beneath us, and I felt a surge of power coursing through my veins. "Keep pushing," I yelled, focusing on the light emanating from within. As we stood our ground, the shadows began to retreat, their whispers fading into silence. "Almost there," Derek shouted, his eyes wide with determination. Suddenly, the darkness exploded outward, collapsing in on itself. The store shifted violently, and I stumbled, but I held onto the girl's hand tightly, refusing to let go. As the chaos subsided, we found ourselves standing at the front of the store, the exit door wide open, revealing the outside world bathed in moonlight. "We did it," I exclaimed, breathless. Derek nodded, a look of disbelief on his face. "We actually did it." The little girl stared at us, her eyes filled with wonder. "Are we safe now?" "Yes," I said, kneeling to her level. "You're safe now. Let's get you back to your mom." With the girl by our side, we rushed toward the exit. Outside, the cool night air hit my face, and I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. We spotted her mother, frantically searching for her near the entrance. "Mom," the girl called out, running toward her. Her mother knelt down, scooping her daughter into her arms. "Oh, thank God," she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. I stood back watching the reunion, a warm sense of satisfaction washing over me. We had confronted the darkness and emerged victorious. But as I turned to leave, I felt a strange pull, a whisper in the back of my mind. I glanced back at the store, its fluorescent lights flickering, the shadows still lurking within. "Let's get out of here," Derek urged, pulling me away from the entrance. "Right," I replied, still entranced by the store's eerie presence. As we walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the store's influence would linger. Weeks passed, and I tried to return to normal life, but I often found myself glancing at the Walmart from a distance. The memories of that night haunted me, the shadows still lurking at the edges of my mind. One evening, I decided to visit a different store. As I browsed through the aisles, I stumbled upon a section of kitchen gadgets, and my heart raced as I remembered the useless item I had attempted to return. "I'll just grab what I need," I muttered, trying to shake off the memories. As I reached for a gadget, a flash of movement caught my eye. I turned, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a familiar figure, a little girl in a pink backpack, disappearing around the corner. "No way," I whispered, feeling a chill creep up my spine. I rushed to follow, my heart pounding. The aisles twisted and turned, each corner leading me further into a maze of forgotten memories. "Derek," I shouted, hoping he would hear me, but there was no response. I continued down the aisles, the shadows creeping back into my mind. As I rounded a corner, I spotted a returns desk, just like the one at Walmart. "This isn't happening," I gasped, the weight of dread returning. I turned to leave, but the fluorescent lights flickered, and the shadows swirled around me, whispering familiar words. "You can't escape us," they seemed to chant. The receipt I had kept clutched in my hand felt heavier, the ink seeming to shift and change. I glanced at it, and my heart sank as I realized the date was wrong once again. I ran toward the exit, desperation clawing at my throat. The store shifted around me, the aisles closing in, trapping me within their grasp. "Help!" I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Just as I reached the exit, the door slammed shut, trapping me inside once more. The shadows flickered around me, their whispers rising to a fever pitch. "Welcome back," they taunted, their voices echoing in the void. I collapsed to the ground, the weight of defeat settling upon me. "No, no, no," I sobbed, clutching the receipt tightly, and in that moment of despair I understood. The cycle was far from over. The darkness would continue to claim its victims, and I was just another soul trapped in the never-ending maze of the impossible receipt. The aisles twisted around me, a never-ending labyrinth of shadows and whispers. I stumbled forward, searching for an escape, but every turn felt like a trap. "You can't leave," the shadows murmured, their voices intertwining like a haunting melody. "You belong to us now." Panic surged within me as I pressed on, determined to find a way out. I spotted a flicker of light in the distance, an oasis of hope in the sea of darkness. "Over there!" I cried out, racing toward the light, but as I reached the end of the aisle, the light flickered and vanished, plunging me back into shadow. The laughter echoed, cold and taunting, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. "No," I shouted, fury rising within me. I refused to accept this fate. I had confronted the darkness once, and I could do it again. I gathered my strength and turned back toward the heart of the store, ready to face whatever awaited me. As I ventured deeper into the store, I felt a presence lurking just beyond my sight. It was as if the very walls were alive, pulsing with a dark energy that threatened to consume me. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. A figure emerged from the shadows, another lost soul, a woman with hollow eyes. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "What happened to you?" I asked, approaching cautiously. "I was drawn in by the whispers," she said, her gaze distant. "Now I can't escape. We're all trapped here." I glanced around, noticing other figures emerging from the darkness, their expressions vacant and lost. "We need to fight back," I urged, feeling a surge of determination. "We can't let the darkness take us." The lost souls gathered around me, their eyes flickering with a hint of hope. "Together," I said, "we can confront this entity. We can break the cycle." The shadows roared, swirling around us as we stood together, united in our resolve. "We won't be afraid," I shouted, feeling the weight of our combined strength. As one, we faced the encroaching darkness, the air crackling with energy. "Leave us be," we cried out, our voices merging into a powerful chorus. The shadows shrieked in response, the swirling mass of darkness trembling before us. Together, we pushed back against the void, our combined strength forcing the shadows to retreat. With each step forward, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, the light breaking through the darkness. As the shadows faded, the store transformed around us. The fluorescent lights glowed brightly, illuminating the once darkened aisles. "Is it over?" Derek's voice broke through the silence, filled with disbelief. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "We did it. We faced the darkness together." The lost souls began to disperse, their faces filled with gratitude as they vanished into the light. As we stood there, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a feeling of despair dissipating. "Let's get out of here," Derek said, his voice steady. Together, we walked toward the exit, the oppressive presence of the store finally behind us. As we stepped outside, the cool night air wrapped around us like a comforting embrace. "We made it," I said, looking up at the stars that twinkled overhead. Derek smiled, relief washing over his face. "But we need to warn others. We have to make sure this doesn't happen again." "Agreed," I said, my mind racing with thoughts. "We can't let the darkness spread." With newfound determination, we set off into the night, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The shadows may have retreated for now, but we were prepared to face them together, armed with the strength of our shared experience. And though the receipt still weighed heavily in my pocket, a reminder of what we had endured, I knew we were no longer trapped in its grip. We were free, and we would fight to keep it that way.